Greetings, beloved family, and thank you all once again for being here with us this evening on Occult Science Radio. I am Curtis Davis, aka the Illuminated One, and tonight we have another brother in the house who can be classified as illuminated as well. This brother was on the show, about 3 years ago. And he claims, this very good friend of mine, and he claims back then that he wasn't ready. Could have fooled me, okay, because the information he shared with us that evening left the listeners buzzing for quite some time. And tonight we are in for a powerful, powerful show. This is a show that I know is going to get a lot of likes on Facebook, and it's going to get tweeted all over the place. Oh, man, I can't wait. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with whom I'm referring to our beloved brother, James Evans Bomar III, more commonly known as Brother Sevan. He is the author of the Code to the Matrix and the developer of the Planetary Resistance website. I have placed a link that he wishes to share with us that has some images that you can follow along with as the brother drops his powerful science this evening. So this is going to be a powerful evening, beloved family. I mean, as you can see, Occult Science Radio is pulling out all the stops. Look at the guests that we've had recently. And it's not me doing this, family, it's you. Because you all inspire me, you all let me know who you want to hear, so I go out of my way to give it to you. So I'm going to start off by thanking our sponsor, TON, the Occult Network. That's www.theoccultnetwork.com. Come by, become a member, because on the Occult Network you will find information that is designed to unlock your consciousness. And feel free to become a TON Premium subscriber. Yes, we have a premium channel, and there you will find some of the most in-depth esoteric content that you won't find anywhere else on the internet, and you're definitely not going to find it in mainstream media. Also, when you come to the Occult Network, don't forget to click on the events link at the top, and there you will find information for the upcoming Free Your Mind Conference 2, slated for Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, April 25th, 26th, 27th, 2013. And I am going to be a featured speaker among the many powerful featured speakers that will be there. When you click on that link and you see who the speaker lineup is going to be, believe me, I have a feeling that you are going to get tickets ASAP, which I suggest because they're going quickly. So yes, visit our events link for the Free Your Mind Conference 2 coming up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, April 25th, 26th, 27th, 2013. You can also find the Occult Network on Facebook. Yes, we have a Facebook page, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you want to keep up with what's going on Occult Science Radio as well, you can also find me, Curtis Illuminated One Davis, on Facebook as well. So come by, become a friend of mine on Facebook, join the Occult Network Facebook page, join us on YouTube and Twitter, and then when you do that, you will be totally in tune to what's going on with the Occult Network and Occult Science Radio. So please, wow, the switchboard is lighting up already, but I have to say it anyway. Please call in with your questions and comments at 646-649-1987. That's 646-649-1987. And if you have a question or a comment for Brother Sevan, don't forget to press number 1 on your keypad so we can get you on the switchboard and take your wonderful questions and comments. Now, having said all of that, I've done enough talking. I'm going to sit back and, like I said, I already have my pen and paper ready because we're going to do some serious learning tonight. With that, I step aside and welcome back our beloved brother, Brother Sevan. Peace and blessings, brother. Welcome back to Occult Science Radio.
Wholeness, Brother Curtis. It's awesome being forward. It's just, it's amazing. I think that the last time I was really on the show, it was actually November. And so it's really full circle. I think we did a couple times or a few times around the circle. But man, it's been amazing. Just like I said, being here tonight and being able to deliver this information. Because tonight, it's going to be that night, that gift for a lot of people to really come to the conclusions and the expansion that they need to get ready to progress. So, I know a lot of people are moving fast on their expansion. It's almost the end of 2012, but there's still certain, as I say, shipments or ships that needed to arrive with some people's cargo, and they're waiting on receiving that last piece of catalyst that's going to be able to ignite them into perpetualness. And that's here. It's like, I think that was the beginning. We promised to deliver that, especially with our network. So by all means, it's great that I'm able to come on the show tonight and to make a really good effort as far as how I consider an effort for one thing or another to do that. So like I said, I just want to thank Tom for having me on and thank all of the members and the guests, the ones that have asked, that there would be, some clarification. And I also want to send wholeness out to just all the people out there, like we've been carrying this torch. Everyone I see at their stations, like working with different parts of the body and different parts of the consciousness that's in this world. So I definitely want to tip my hat to so many individuals out there that have laid not only the path or the groundwork for me to be able to do this today, but all the inventors that even put their time and energy and essence into creating the things that are allowing us to communicate. All of that was the bridge that got us to this point, at least where we are now. And so I definitely see, I want to say in the beginning of this entire conversation, to me, in my mind, all is self. Where we're at is in a stage of we're in between stages of full realization of that. And so we all have an opportunity to see things sometimes not exactly the way that they are. And to fully correct ourselves and become adept and adult, we must see things clearly. We have to get to a point where we remove all filters from our eyes so that we can behold the what they say was the image, but now we have to see it within ourselves as the real Most High. Like, I have to break down several words tonight, especially words like God. I just want to let people know that I'm also an etymology major, so in many cases, there's words that we have to change around in order for things to not get confused. One of my first disclaimers where I talk about the difference between the soul and the spirit is really to let people know Earth is a gift. Like, I was able to, on several occasions, breach into the highest states of our consciousness and interact with the frequencies and the harmonics and the orchestras that are there. And one thing they always say with a very, very soft smile on the face is that Earth is indeed a gift. It can stand on its own. It was here for billions of years. Man and woman were invited to this planet. And in many cases, the things that we're doing to each other through what we've learned and what's here has made us grow callous and get confused to who's who and what's what. And we've all done that. That's like a part of our growth. But I just want to say to everyone here, whatever is said tonight and whatever information reaches your ears into how you understand it, do not take your problems or negative energy out on this planet. This planet has been like a mother to us. That's just what happened. Like, we have to really tap into not reality, but actuality, basically how things really are. And we eat from this planet, so that means that there is a major dedication that we have to her as not just a father, not just a mother, but also a father, meaning that this planet is androgynous. It has proved as such because it can create and destroy. It has proved as such because it is a generator of energy, and what we take from it can produce life. And everything that can produce life has what they call in our reality a positive and negative pole, or masculine and feminine. But it's just the energies that are necessary to work a dynamo or an energy center. So, of course, we also have that. The biggest discovery that I would say that we've discovered is something that lets you purge all truth from falsehood. You really don't need to listen to anyone. All you have to do is whatever you pick up or whatever you think is true, you should find correspondences to it, all the way on the deepest level of the realms and the abyss, all the way back up to the highest vault of the entire expanse that we're in, meaning that truth is redundant. That's why it stands throughout segments of time, and all of what we've created is time. But the reality is that if you stand with truth, then you'll exist that long too, which is infinitely. But if you attach yourself to falsehood, then you will blow away with the slightest gust of wind. And I could definitely say right now what we're experiencing, especially at the end of this year in light of the situations, there's been many situations this year, but right now the energy cooking up between the pentagram and the hexagram, or Gaza, who bears the pentagram and the crescent as their star or their flag under Islam, and also Israel, who bears the Megan star, mistakenly called the hexagram. We have to get that correct today. The hexagram is actually a pentagram because it was used to put hexes on people, but the reality is with these belief systems and these potent symbols that we have taken up in this time and tried to define what they really mean, we at times miss the mark. And even in the esoteric and occult world, there's knowledge of those who miss the mark, which is also called pan. Pan means to move to the left or to the right, as they say, pan the camera. So it's important for us to realize that we've been attempting to accomplish something here. Many souls have been attempting to accomplish something that they have not been able to accomplish. This is called missing the mark. This means that things have occurred that sometimes make our path not look as shiny as we would like it to look. And we're often afraid if others start to venture into it and start to see what it may be that we've been involved in. This is the same thing, even if we face that on a personal level, we also face it with our universal lives. The past has been riddled, as they show coming out of an abyss or coming out of darkness, it's been riddled with an ignorance, what we call ignorance, which is basically darkness of fear, not knowing the light or not knowing what the truth really is. Allowing the full spectrum light to shine to all corners is really what we're developed to do. And so by all means, let us do it. So I really have to first tell everyone, if you want to really find the Most High, you don't need to go to lost and barren lands of ancient civilizations and stories. You don't need to go to any type of ritual and meeting and seance or whatever. You only need to look at what is right now keeping you and sustaining you by your needs. And so the first thing that we definitely have to determine is the needs of an individual are breath, in many cases light, and water. So if you're looking for the Most High, you'll probably find it connected to those elements. Because those elements, from the time you step onto this planet, if you don't have it, it's already over. Now, those elements are also divided in degrees. Like you could do without water longer than you can do without breath, can't you? So the reality is that how in the ancient times the energies were seen as far as their superiority was how fast you were going to be done if you didn't have that. And so those were the original concepts of what we believed in our mind to be the highest forces. Now, there was an encounter here on our planet quite some time ago that actually equates to why, on a natural level, we are scared of spirits. Meaning if a superflush gaseous being that you can still see on your dense frequency walks in your room right now, you may jump out the window. You may run through the wall. You'd be surprised at how much power you have. And it is because an age-old situation that happened when the souls, meaning a soul is something that you've never seen because it's inside of you. You'll never see it with your two eyes. You only can understand it. It's in the Innerverse. But what you see on the outside of you, if it ever appears as a spirit, is basically what I call a spirit. So the encounter, that first encounter from the souls to the spirits, was indeed painful. Because if you understand all the etymology behind the word, the spirits that are dealing with this dimension right now, known as Yaz, which means fire, then you'll understand that these spirits are actually like flaming fires. And so now I have to take you into the garden, not by talking to you about some Bible or Tubal Cain book, but showing you just in theory and in mathematics and in science and in even common sense, it'll tell you, if you go to your grandmother, then you go to her grandmother, then her grandmother, eventually you'll get back to a small group of people, and maybe eventually you'll get back to actual androgynous beings. It's just mathematics. That's the language of power, by the way. So the mathematics will show you that there was an origination of things. But some people just want to focus on this as far as themselves. But let us think about the trees and many of the animals that existed here in their first arrival here on Earth and where they happen to be. And then that place that we can just call that the garden. So in the garden, they say there was two trees. One, a tree of life, and then the other one, the tree was the knowledge of good and evil. It says, of course, according to these books, that we ate from the knowledge of good and evil. But what I'm showing you is a wrapped up mystery. The mystery is when you begin to do anything with concepts of good and evil, meaning you think in your mind that you need to find what's good and what's evil, you've entered duality. The secondary stories on why it's been done and what you think is good and what you think is bad is the after effects. But you've entered duality when you say you want to know what exactly is good and evil. So from there, we have to understand that the first breaking of our DNA, which was whole, began to occur when we wanted to know what was good and what was evil. Now, there are several symbols that are used in connection to what occurred next. In modern times, one of those symbols is an apple. Now, in occult literature, if you go and look at the books that are $40,000, $50,000, you'll find that the apple itself is an occult symbol for a pentagram. And the reason is when you cut an apple down the center, there's 5 seeds in there. So in the occult world, the pentagram is actually the apple. Now, it just so happens that if you're seeing certain symbols around the reality a lot, as a Time Lord, time traveler, or whatever these people keep saying they are, you would need to ask yourself, why do these certain symbols keep occurring? Why do you keep seeing pentagrams? Why do you keep seeing hexagrams? And what do they mean? Even if I was just to arrive to this planet, I would ask myself that question at a certain point because I would see it as a mark or a brand or a symbol everywhere, on the flags, on the clothes. Now, it's interesting because in history, especially to the American culture, when the origins of the pentagram is explained in school, it's said that a lady invented this flag, this star, but first she drew it with 4 points. And then, the government invented the flag and drew it with 4 points. But when this lady saw it, she drew it with 5 points, and then the government said, oh, that looks a lot better. And then from that point, they adopted this as the 5-pointed star on the flag. This is a story that they're given for the origins of a symbol that has been used since ancient times. So it means that obviously they're trying to hide something. So when you break down the mathematics, which we're not going to get too much into, but just to understand it directly, the pentagram is related to the art we know as Phi. Phi is an ancient Chinese tradition based upon combustion, meaning that just as you see with paper, rock, scissors, or fire beats water, and then water beats fire, and then wood beats water, and that same system of combustion or conflict is an ancient symbol, also known as the R sign, also known as the Ood sign, also known as the corner, but what we call today the pentagram. Now, this symbol is one of the most occult symbols across not only into this planetary system, but even across this immediate solar system, that the pentagram holds sway over multiple entities in this solar system. And the reason is because it is actually a 2-dimensional imprint of a circle with straight lines, basically. And so to make this simple, each corner of the pentagram has 72 degrees. When you take 72 degrees and you times it by 5, you get 360 degrees. This means somehow a symbol that is containing straight lines is somehow equivalent to a circle which contains no straight lines. Now, again, we're just going through preliminaries here because this is about a 3-hour or actually 2-hour and 30-minute conversation or something like that. So I have to give you the foundation to the work of what was understood by myself in basically penetrating through all of the esoteric knowledge and paths that are available here on this planet and also throughout this solar system. What people think is a lot to say, but really you'll start seeing after a while, there's nothing new under the sun. What's happening is that we're in a cycle or a circle or a spiral, continuously repeating the same things that are not getting us anywhere. I'm going to switch from the pentagram just a little bit here. Now you understand it's 72 degrees times 5. And talk about, 72 degrees times 5. And talk about the body. What the body is. Now, of course, the body is calculated in the mathematics of 5. If you want to find this mathematics, you look at your finger. From the fingertip to the next segment of your finger, all the way down to the next segment of your finger is built and constructed a certain way. It's the same reason why the distance from the bottom of your palm into the corner or elbow of your hand is exactly the same size as your foot. Now, this type of mathematics, or this type of building, is known as phi. So, when you see a pentagram, in general, in the old times, it meant that someone was familiar with a level of building, a way of building certain things on Earth, because there's many things like conch shells and how the ocean moves. There's many things that operate on this level and structure of energy. So before the symbol ever became debased by who I call the counterfeiters, they're not originators, they're evolvers. Before the symbols became debased, you saw those symbols in nature. And that's one of the pictures that is sourced in that link that was sourced earlier with the pictures. It shows you all the geometry in nature is then taken from nature and then made and utilized by these occult networks and occult organizations that are all throughout the world, Illuminati, whatever you want to call them. But there's one difference. They're using straight lines. Nature never, if you see all of the symbols that it has, which is pentagrams, what we call the pentagram, what we call the square, and all these symbols are in nature, but they have round corners. So in my studies, I started to realize that the biggest thing to start to differentiate between was whether you were dealing with a counterfeiter, meaning an individual like what they call a Lucifer or a Sataniel or whatever name they want to give it, of whoever says that they're God, basically, a counterfeiter or the originator. Now, by the end of this conversation, people will realize that they are the originators. What's happening to you is your ladder, or 94% of your DNA, which is your ladder, the holiest of holies as it's called, is broken. And because of that, you are not able to interact with the wavelengths that are equating to you having fully corrected DNA. This would give you the total realization that you are the Most High. You will be in a totally interconnected network, a symphony of perfection in itself. Perpetual, basically. Infinite energy, no sleep, like the sun. However, the other state beyond that is actually the sleep. So we have to start to differentiate. Where are we really? What is really going on with us? How do we not remember what was written on some pyramid walls only 2,000 years ago? Where is the disconnection coming from? Why do we seem to need to find God? Why is not God already here? You know, these are the major questions, and I tell you the truth, for the last 3 years, I've been digging and digging and digging for these answers, along with what started as 2, 3 people, to then 400, then 600, then 2,000, now 6,000. And millions of impressions across the internet of individuals gathering information just trying to crack the code. There's no motive to get your money and to get your souls or nothing like that. We're trying to get out, not stay in. It's very clear after a while that if whatever is being done and how it's being done is probably the situation or the problem. So for you to start doing it will probably put you into becoming the problem. So this is why we search for originality. We search for information that was not known by everyone and just wasn't easily accepted. But we had something that allowed us to purge truth from falsehood, as I spoke earlier about, which is anything that is really the truth, you'll find it in multiple places, all the way above, all the way to the bottom, if you have something to be able to see it. So with just the understanding or understanding, let's say, that the body is 5, you now need to understand how the body is actually constructed. Inside of the body, they have centers known as chakras. I'm not going to get into a long chakra conversation because I'm sure everyone on this line is familiar with chakras. But what the chakras actually are, as they keep explaining to you, is actually the planet. We are a microcosmic diagram of the entire universe. What lays out in the sky is actually a large androgynous being that has the planets as its chakras. So the universe itself is a stretched out version of us. And as they tell you, and they try to say it in the hologram, but it's actually anything that's projected from a photon is the case. What it'll tell you is that every piece contains a part of the whole. So what you see is this multiplicity or this redundancy throughout the entire spectrum of the same design in our body, of the universe, and our body contains that on multiple levels. So what has occurred now is that each eye in our body, each chakra, which is indeed an eye or portal, is governed based upon the frequency of the knowledge, the symbols, etc., that we have taken in or ingested into our consciousness as a part of us. So this equates to, if you're a religious person, you prefer, let's say, Islam, and if you're tethered to the pentagram and the crescent moon. If you prefer Judaism, then you're tethered to the Magan star. If you prefer Egyptian knowledge or Kemetic knowledge, then you're tethered to the Ankh. See, how it works is that the entire body has these different perspectives. But you must now today understand how to be king over or master or lord over your body to put these planets back into balance. Meaning that, of course, if one of the planets or chakras in your body is getting more of the energy, getting more of the respect, you're occultating under that particular planet, it's going to grow stronger than the other ones that are getting neglected. And then it's going to start raising itself up over them. Some people, of course, have a very active root chakra. So it has raised itself up over all the other chakras in the body and is pulling most of the power from them. So what's happened also is that because each of these chakras are an eye, once you turn it on, you only see things according to how far that chakra can really see. So this was the mystery that the Hindus and many of the ancient teachers already knew, is that the ones who had only root chakras open, first of all, could not even see the future. What they saw was the past. The second thing is that the idealism and the things that they thought to be the highest would really be the lowest, meaning their thoughts would be the base. Because if you didn't really understand how to cycle your energy and also to go into the higher chakras and tap into that level of consciousness, then sometimes you can mistake that everything that you're dealing with on the planet, or on the universe, is what is just going on one planet in your consciousness. Now, it's no mistake at all that we're here. I'll tell you the truth, there's a lot of knowledge that's being passed around that says these aliens created us. If you really look at the image in the drawings, what you'll see is that all they did was hybridize or tamper with what was also known as a tree, our lineage, our DNA. And in tampering with it, they broke it. So they're not originators, they're evolvers. You have to know the difference. What they're saying the Anunnaki birdmen did, which are really actually dogmen, Anu is still a dog. The cult is with Cain. Cain is from Canaan. These covenants is what we really have to look into, not to skip the subject here, but it is the subject. If we want to understand everything that's going on, we have to open up the covenants. We have to open up the arcs or the archives, and we have to see the symbolism that are on the arcs and the archives that will tell us all the information about all the pacts and all the different covenants that have been made with our planet. And one of those covenants is the covenant between the dog Sirius, Big Five. Also the other side of Venus. Like, what's happening to us today is that when we access this knowledge and information, we can't even feel what it means, let alone to be able to comprehend it and to position oneself properly so that they can withstand the gravitational pull of a frequency. when we choose to tap into these energies, even when it's just in our studies, we have to realize that at that point there has been a line of communication established between you and a consciousness that already exists. So what happens is when we're not reading the fine print, meaning when we're not reading all of the rest of what comes with the agreement, and we choose to be on one side or one another, then at times this leads to also blindness. So understand now that closed eyes or closed chakras are associated with blindness. When all of the chakras open, then you see things as they really are. They all start to compress on each other. How this manifests in this reality is many of the belief systems, teachings, religions, and structures all come from the same source. If you didn't notice the hierarchy, then you must have had your eyes closed, meaning that when you really pull the knowledge of, let's say, Voodoo and Yoruba, you find that Europe was even named after Yoruba. The heart is a V. Those symbols belong to Venus. When you study into these structures, you actually begin to see that all of this knowledge that we have that's around us is coming from systems that have been running for a prolonged period of time. And then when we come to this planet, into this level of realization, if we choose to go ahead and just jump right into something that we don't even really understand completely, we're still seeing it as black and white. Basically like black and white, that you're still seeing in black and white, and these folks are using millions of colors, then you can miss the full spectrum of what exactly is taking place here. So let's just get right into this. Now, how this really worked is that the only thing that has ever been important on this planet up until this point has been fertility. There is such a deep connection in this planet and fertility that it makes up exactly why you're here. So the knowledge that we're really talking about stems really deeply into the sexual nature of our reality. Now, I'll say it now just so I can present the solution before we start presenting the problem, that the full state of where we were was we can inside bring ourselves to an orgasm. There needed to be nothing that we saw externally. We were so much in love with ourselves, basically, that we could create a perpetual energy within ourselves. Once we look into an external reality, also known as the image of God, like a mirror, then we start to select what becomes our orgasm or our entertainment or our happiness and what keeps us going. When you do that too much, you actually begin to be stuck in an external world. So let's get very clear. Our original state as an androgynous being in the Innerverse is we can keep a perpetual dynamo or sun or your own light basically running because you are in full emancipation with yourself. So now when you step into a three-dimensional reality, in ancient knowledge, what this is called is the image of God, a mirror per se. So of course, because you see so many different things, you see flowers, you see mountains, you see rain, you see all these different things, obviously you're seeing God in his divided state. This God is known as Dios, or Deus, or Zeus. And this is also the secret to the peace sign, which it says is the satanic movement. But to understand it, it's duality. You'll see this dual symbolism everywhere, by the way, red versus blue. So the reality here is that even the gods that were praised in this dimension after the knowledge began to be degraded, especially, were dualistic gods. There was a fight going on all the time. This fight also corresponds to the fight and the war going on in your body. As you see in the Hindu text, the battlefield of Arunja is actually the battle that you face in your body towards incarnation. So what we have to start seeing is this is what I call a micro-macro vision. You start to be able to associate things that you're seeing in the reality along with things that you're actually experiencing in your body. Another thing that I want to introduce right away right now is the solution to the entire thing. I'm totally solution driven, but we'll definitely get into some deep stuff as this conversation goes. But I want to introduce these solutions. It's so simple. You're a wheel. The auric field and everything else moves in a circulatory motion like a dynamo. Now, if anyone here on this line has ever drove a really fast car with a warped wheel or a warped wheel, then you can bear witness to exactly what takes place when anything that is in a 360-degree motion or circular motion starts to become unbalanced. What occurs? Vibration, you get bad cornering, loss of gas mileage, all sorts of things occur because the wheel is imbalance. So how does a wheel get back balanced? You go to the tire shop, they run it across that spin thing, and then they put a little piece of lead where it's actually imbalanced. So how would you do that for your aura? Well, the entire field is magnetic. You will study bioenergetics, and you will figure out the point that you're actually unbalanced, and then you will put the proper pole of the small $3 magnet on that area and watch the perfection come into place. It's that simple. And of course, you need an energy field. You definitely don't need to be getting your energy drained. So that's actually at the end of the quest that becomes applicable. When you actually are able to detach from all the things that are draining the energy, so that way when you finally correct the field, then it just powers up. But still understand, again, I'm giving you the solution. It works, the aura itself works like a wheel. A magnet, the misconception is magnet is north and south pole. A magnet is an entry and an exit. Let's do the correct knowledge here. Now, there's an entry point and an exit point, even of this earth. There's an entry and an exit point. Now, depending upon what you need to do, you know whether you need something to be pulled out or you need it to be something to be pushed in or plugged. So, again, the solutions before the problem. Correct the magnetic auric field. This is the magnetic field based on light, photons, and gravity. You won't really go to sleep. You'll stay awake. The higher chakras begin to power up. You'll advance into massive levels of your job, duty, experiences, etc. The coiled serpent, as they call it, which we'll get into later on. And then you go into working in this reality, distributing your gifts. See, some people thought they were going to be gone. They thought they were going to get in a spaceship and leave. That's not how it works. If you understand the teachings, it says energy cycles, meaning when you go all the way up, you receive these gifts. Then when you come back down, you distribute it down into your soil again, meaning the physical plane, the brown color, the dirt, the earth. And you distribute the seeds there, and then they grow up again, and this stays in perpetual energy. This is what we're supposed to be doing with the planet. Right now, like I tell you, if these folks don't see Messiah, then they are going to go nuts. Meaning that if they don't see the Christ or the Messiah or the Kundalini awakening in you, they're subject to tear up the planet because that's the only thing they fear. What's happening is that all of who you are is coiled up in the base of your spine. That's why it's referred to a coiled serpent. It's really like they talk about the Akashic records. What it really is your coiled up disc. Everyone wants to figure out where they are, or who they are, etc. Right? Can you take me through a past life regression? Can you tell me what I am and by my zodiac? It's actually, no, your information is inside of you, coiled up in the base of your spine. And because you've been running from who you are, it doesn't come out. It does not activate. But when it does, it sprays itself up through your chakra centers, opening up those eyes and awakening all centers of total realization of who you are. Now you have to be willing to deal with it. This is the other side to the information that people are not getting, which is they think that when a person comes into a full awakening, it's all going to be flowers and roses. But how could that be when we just came off of exactly at least 2 or 3 aeons of foolishness, where the holy knowledge has been completely usurped? Meaning the beast has entered the holiest of holies. What is the holiest of holies? It's the DNA. All temples on earth, even the Temple of Solomon, is configured as a temple of the body. Baalbek was configured as a temple of the body. This is because there's a redundant knowledge, it's Pythagoras will hold up the phi sign, that everything here has a phi-based relationship to it. And if you make one or inscribe one or find a symbol that corresponds with one, it can harness the power that is here. Now, of course, this leads to, because some people are already asking, well, what happened? What went wrong? Well, the ultimate power is also the ultimate weapon. Meaning that the ultimate thing that can emancipate the entire universe can also destroy the entire universe. That's how it's always been. The two have never been separated from each other. What's happening is the welder. Meaning, now let me give you the secret behind the name God. God is, there's no, first of all, to understand the name, God is Yod. The Hebrew word Yod, Y-O-D. Because in Hebrew, a G is a Y. In English, a G is a Y, is a I, is a J. All of those letters are synonymous with each other. So we find God as really Yod. What is Yod? Yod is 10. This is what they tell you. This is what the numeric equivalent is, 10. It means a dual component because there's a 1 and somebody was foolish enough to even write a 0. How could you write something that doesn't even exist? So what you're dealing with is a counterfeit God. That's why Yod means hand. It means like we use to do everything we need to do in this world to create form and fashion, we have to use our hand. But this same kind of principle, if you want to understand the principalities here, is when someone jumps up and says, I am the only Yod, I'm the only Alpha and Omega. First of all, there is no Alpha and Omega. There is no beginning or end. Like the next level of knowledge for all of humanity is to understand that you can't actually find where any of this began. That's why it always remains as something that we have a hard time comprehending. Our minds must now grow into the minds of our parents, sometimes called the ancestors, which is they don't know a beginning or an end. That's what keeps them vast. That's what keeps them having the ability to allow so many different things to multiply and to grow and to fertilize, etc., while still not running out of room. Now, because it feels like we're running out of room in the physical reality, we tap into another space known as inner space, which is vast, meaning that the depth of who we are is where we'll find the greatest ability to expand, not in the limitations of this three-dimensional world, which we're still unpacking. Everything that is here in this world came from our mind. They ask this question, what came first, the chicken or the egg? The idea. In the physical reality, everything that you see here was something that we bought here, some way or another. But there's still things that are yet to arrive. This is what we should understand. Like when somebody creates a new song, nobody in the world has supposedly heard that song before. Where did it come from? It came from that person's mind. So what else is in these minds? Now notice how the word mind is synonymous with a place where you go and find jewels and gold. You got to dig deep in the mind. So where do you think you're going to find the jewels and the gold of who you really are? You're going to have to get deep. And to me, I started realizing that deepness, that depth was actually corresponded with our legs. And that our body as being configured as this universal map, and you even have there's diagrams for this that have already been put together in the Deep Eastern teachings, but the legs of the body correspond to the netherworld. What they call the netherworld does all the work for the higher planes. The higher planes ride on the netherworld as if the netherworld is some type of chariot. They like to call this Jacob and Boaz, so all the initiations are just rolled up under that. What happens is that this plane, or what they call Malkuth, until we switch it to what it really could be, becomes basically God's, as they call it, or Yod's footstool. And what happens is with our body, as you see with the legs are dual. One is constantly trying to walk out in front of the other. We call that walking. So what happens is that if you don't know how to identify how the levels of the body were put together, you end up lost in the universe because the body is the universe. So what we'll see is that this lower level of our body, which corresponds to the netherworld, was also Lower Egypt. Now I was corrected, especially in the beginning, but it was like, yo, you're calling Lower Egypt because you're not understanding how the Nile flows. But Lower Egypt is not Nubia, brother. Lower Egypt is up there where the Elizabethans were. Like that's Lower Egypt, and the other Egypt is, down there in Nubia before it was split up after the Kushite king lost his throne. So, need to get it cleared up. So I said, okay, well, let me look into it. And then what you'll realize is that the reason why most people went to Lower Egypt was because someone had died or they were seeking the knowledge of what happens when you die. They have come to that point. That's why everything there is about how to deal with the netherworld and the astral planes, etc. So what we find when we go into this is we find that the netherworld is still corresponding to a deep level of subconsciousness, very similar to sleep. In the netherworld, you have to have your own light, or you're subject to get put out, basically. Something will vanquish your light. So how this plays out in the physical reality for us is that many people that were so fascinated with the depth of the netherworld decided that they would actually spread that netherworld over the entire world. So now I'm going to explain to you about the God that was in Egypt and what he is capable of doing. Now, first of all, the trick on the word he is the word he is the Hebrew word he, which actually means 5, and it actually means female. So that's the first thing. You have to realize that these beings are androgynous, so they can play any level that they really need to get the point across. Now, it was said that there was a stone that fell from the sky, and that from the moment that stone fell from the sky, from its real principles and things that it was capable of doing, it became worshipped. Now, what you'll find is that that stone set itself up in an ark. And that ark, a group of people made a covenant with that ark. And they carried it around ever since, and it was used like a weapon at times. And then on idle times, the ark would demand from its priests, who could control the earth current known as Levi, the earth or the world serpent, Leviathan. They would, when moved by this energy, they would be explained on how to bring these large blocks in the vicinity of this hyperdimensional entity so that it could carve symbols into the designs we know today as obelisks. Because the obelisk is very similar to acupuncture or acupressure tool. It is used to push into certain energy centers on the planet, and then, just like how our body works, rechannel that energy somewhere else. Now, we find, of course, that the parallels between, actually I won't get into too much of the information about Lower Egypt at this point, but just to understand the parallels between what Hollywood is and what Egypt is, or the netherworld, became the same thing. And that many of the obelisks, pretty much all of them that were carved, were removed from Egypt as they are Lower Egypt as they are now, and then placed in mainly 7 countries of the world on their ley lines. And that pinning of the Earth's energy is what's been putting it under the dominion of sleep in the netherworld, meaning that it's a simple concept. If you can find out on Earth what corresponds to the netherworld, you take things there, consecrate them, then you take them and spread them out and put them right into the energies of the Earth, then the Earth falls asleep. You see, the knowledge itself is actually contained within our body. So just like the old Ayurvedic doctors, they learned what trees could really heal us based on when they would take the tree, they were so in touch with their body, they could feel where the tree and everything would go. So they knew what was going to heal the heart and what was going to do different things. So this is not knowledge that the first people on this planet did not already possess. However, once again, to take us into the garden, you see that there is something clearly going on where there's other spirits here that seem to convince man and woman to do things that they have no business doing. They keep prolonging their life and stay here in misery. So it obviously would have to be another miserable being to do such things. It has to be a frequency to correspond to that. And if we see the earth in pain today, we can see that obviously there is some type of malevolent force. This is a thing that has to be accepted. There's some type of malevolent force, but it is in a hierarchy, I'll tell you. It functions as a unit. It can really be tracked down and identified, and then once you do that, you not only can remove people from it, but you can also keep yourself from being dragged into it. Now, I do have to find some level of anchor point here. The only situation that's been happening is lately I've been explaining so many things through images or pictures. I've, kind of lost the ability to be able to just talk about things that I can't exactly show people, because now it gets so deep in knowledge. If you don't show a person a picture of what you're talking about, they like, okay, I can't even follow you on that. I can't even see how that would actually work. But then when you take them all the way through it, then they say, okay, I see exactly how it is. And, of course, that's the link that I source today. I'm not even sure, as I told Curtis, that I'm going to be referring to that because I'm not sure how many of the listeners actually have access to their internet connections and not just calling in on the line. But I'm sure anyone that calls through Skype has internet connection. But again, I just don't really want to talk today as if those images are actually there, but they're very important. So when you do get a chance, look through the images that I sourced on that link so that you can also put it all together. Because everything is there of what you need to understand about it. Now, again, finding some type of anchor point, you have to realize that, again, this malevolent force that is moving throughout the earth really functions on one basic principle, and of course it's always divide and conquer. And because the symbol of division or combustion or conflict and quarreling, which actually does create an energy, is still rolled under one symbol known as the pentagram, then you can start to trace down who exactly is really involved in the greatest levels of confusion. Now, the only reason why you would need to do, again, such things is to make sure that you're not in the way of the conflicts and the confusions that are going on right now in this world today. Because here's one of the basic things that you'll understand about the symbolism. Just like the pentagram or the pentagon or whatever, you'll find it in flowers. Now, the hexagram you'll find in water crystals and you'll find in light, meaning that none of these symbols really belong to these organizations. What they belong to is the creators and originators of the universe. Now, it's obvious the creators of the universe are not carrying on like these people are carrying on. The creators of the universe have put certain things into play and are going to let it play out. So one thing about all of the stories that I've noticed that have been written about New Age prophecies and old-time prophecies is that this story always ends with quote-unquote good triumphing over evil, meaning that people actually get to a point where they figure this out and start to expand based on the knowledge and the clarification of the knowledge. But what happens is if our symbols have been hijacked by none other than the force that is still trying to pull us down, keep us here, harness our energy, harvest our energy, etc., then we become extremely confused. So now, if a person again sees a pentagram, you should understand that pentagram connects to 5, and basically everything related to 5. And 5 is related to fighting and combustion. And when you see a hexagram, you should understand that that is about a connection. As some people call it more clearly, a sexagram, because there's a connection when one triangle enters another triangle. This means that two spirits are coming into connection. If it's taken on an external level, then it means two physical beings are coming into connection. So, again, when you see other individuals around the dimension utilizing these symbols, you always have to snap into understanding exactly what they mean. Like, you can't go into thinking, you can't go into their interpretation of the symbolism. So, to pull apart the symbolism, what you'll find is that the real tree on this planet is actually the DNA. The tree itself is also known as a ladder. And that means that when you're capable of climbing or activating your DNA fully, then you can climb up your DNA or climb up your level of consciousness. But what has occurred before then in order to break down that has been basically information, knowledge of good and evil, all these different systems, belief systems and structures, all the different things that we've filled our mind with that have actually not been getting us right to the control point of what has taken place. And so what that causes is time. It causes excessive amount of time to be wasted, and then we've been sitting here in time. So now let's talk about how to expand and get out of time. So here's the first level of this. So let me change gears here. All the religions that you see here in the world right now are actually under a system that is known as the Kabbalah. Many people are familiar with the Kabbalah, but to make it very simple, that there was an original language that was spoken here on the planet. Because there is already a knowledge, especially by those who call themselves adept, that before anything is created, it is on the physical plane, it is created first in the spiritual plane. This is called inception. When something is born into the physical plane, it's called conception. So man's womb, which many people are unaware that man has, incepts. It creates other beings in the astral plane. Woman's womb concepts. It creates vehicles for those beings to come into. So what Kaaba is actually a word that means the intersecting of flesh and spirit. So to make it simple. Now, the divisions of the Kabbalah, as it's called, are the traits of what this being that is attempting to be or going to be created has. Whether it's going to be a cow, whether it's going to be an ox, whether it's going to be this size, whether it's going to be that size, whether it's going to have a smooth temperament, whether it's going to be rough. The same thing with humans, whether it's going to be short, tall, black, white. All of this is actually on the DNA string, like dip switches. So, again, to interpret what Kabbalah and original Kabbalah is man and woman's attempt to write down and bring out symbols and drawings that relate to how life was created. And even bring the tones and the vibrations that actually create life so that we can also be creators. Now, there's no doubt that we're creators because we do create children, but on another level, we create many things with our ideas, and especially with our will. The main thing about creation is two things for those who want the answer to how to free up their current or currency. You have to understand that your currency is directly connected to the energy in your body. So if your energy is low, then your money is low. Now, having a rapid and large amount of energy has nothing to do with whether you're bad or good. If somebody's trying to answer the question, well, why do a lot of people that are really wicked have a lot of money? Because they have a lot of energy. They have a lot of spirit. Because, as I explained earlier, there's obviously a connection going on between spirits and souls all the time. All the time, people are, through music, through any portal or orifice that they have in their body, in communication with spirits based on what they do. So you can see now that there was a structure that was created to attempt to map all of this out. And I show the picture in the image here. It's called Kabbalistic Course 1. If someone's tuning in to where we're going to start here on those images, they can scroll all the way down to where it says Kabbalistic Course 1, which is a chart. And, of course, that's above another picture for anyone who needs any more notification of there's a crescent moon and a Star of Israel, and it says maybe it's the God. So it's right above that, the first picture, which is Kabbalistic Course, just for all those that are following along with that. But basically, to make this very simple, all of the religions in the world have been structured based on what the result of what they're going to cause. Meaning of what is the result of the people that are going to go into these temples and how they're going to come out, and then what shape or form and fashion they're going to be in. Meaning, if you notice with the, and I probably need to get a little water here in a moment, but if you notice with all the temples on earth that are real temples, they've been constructed to be based on the geometric relationship to our bodies. The external temples. So when a person goes into an external temple that is configured generally as a hexagram and a pentagram, and they go into this building, and then they open themselves up to receive, as they call it, let me receive the spirits. Let me bind myself or oath myself or agree or let me pray. What happens at that point is the individual comes in communication or communion with these entities. And then that changes their DNA. So if you've been wondering, it's not done on a cold floor in a UFO. The DNA manipulation has been going on in all of our intake. What we eat, the information we put in, and our spiritual contact. So people often leave out the spiritual contact, but the mind, the body, our vehicle is set up as a mind, body, and a soul. So, of course, in the mind, it's the information. Of course, in the body, it's the food. But in the soul, where is it coming from? And where it's coming from in the soul is our communion with other spirits. But the key to the reason why the spirit controls everything is because it is to the depth of the spirit that is necessary to alter the DNA. This is very similar to why you can't really just affect a cell in the body unless you have something to actually really affect cells, which is special equipment. So it's the same thing here. You can't affect your DNA unless you use your spirit to do it. So what happens here is that the spiritual communion is done on this planet as a way that it functions. For those individuals saying, okay, so we're going to stop spiritual communion. Well, what happens is that we're actually the product here on this planet of a spiritual communion. Just as they show the two elements, fire and the water, but the fire and the water create steam. We are the steam. We're actually the birth of two large and major opposing forces at times, meaning that water or fire coming together and creating a being that actually contains water and fire. To anyone else in the universe, that's called a miracle. But basically, because our bodies because our spirits are, of course, fire, and then our body is, of course, water, then you have a spirit sunk in the water, but functioning through the combustion of the energy that's created. So before you go and you demonize the entire system, you have to still realize that if it was running properly and we were all tuned in to what we need to be tuned into with ourselves, then there would be really no complaints. This will be glorious. We will all have smiles on our face. But it's only because of the imbalance, which has started to cause disease and decay within our magnetic core, that we feel like we need to get out of here and we feel like this may be the end. So still realize that that's what I'm doing for you. Is I'm taking you through the symbolism, and I want to show you how they interpret it versus how it should really be interpreted. Meaning their version of what they're doing with the six-pointed star is drawing it on the ground and pulling spirits out that they can put inside of their bodies and put inside of their adherent bodies. What the real connection with it was is something that goes on internally, not in the external world, with your communion with who you really are, which is everything. So we have to see that this is so close, and that's why people get confused at times. This is so close to what's happening, and the tools that are being used to make it happen are blending together so close. We can't even tell who's who and what's what. But today, I really want to show everyone that. And again, just really need to source these images. But what I have is another image of what I call a hierarchy or a Kabbalistic core. Now, you have to understand that when people such as even the mafia were promised that they were going to have an afterlife as long as they paid for it by the Pope, that these individuals would not be paying for anything unless they saw it. This is the mafia. So people need to start asking themselves, how can another group of individuals start promising others that they can actually get them into heaven? Where is it? Like, when does the person see it? Because some people, even in the Christian faith and different religions, say that they've even been taken there. So some people will say, well, it's just a figment of their imagination, but actually it's not. What's going on here now is that because the knowledge of how to create worlds, and like I said, the holiest of holies, the DNA knowledge has been tapped into, there were planes created, mainly in the cubic fashion, of multiple, is what they call mansions. This is the Bible. In my Father's house there are many mansions, but multiple dimensions of different parallel lives running of you. That these individuals who've taken the knowledge and started building worlds are making sure that you end up in every time you reincarnate. And almost every time you end up exactly opposite to what you were before. They just flip your pole. So that way you don't know anything about what you were doing before, because you would never expect you to be like that, seeing that you're actually opposite to that now. We're talking about the secrets of reincarnation, because you got people around here that are professional reincarnators. Like a llama is a professional reincarnator. They pick the toys and the things that they need in the beginning, but as soon as they regress, they pretty much know everything, and they pick up 400, 500 years of knowledge and keep going. What's happening to us is we get magnetized and polar shifted, wiped like credit cards across Earth's magnetic field, come out in another plane through a portal that we were magnifying the most, and then we're in there, or opposite to, or inverted to what we were magnifying the most, and then we come out of there like babies again. See, this is what our ancestors sought to figure out. Like, how do you go into a new world without being vulnerable to what can occur in that world? See, many children right now are coming into this world, and they're very vulnerable to nasty things happening to them. So even if you want to understand some of these so-called controllers, they have an incessant fear of going into worlds that they cannot control. So once they gain a certain level of control over this one, the next thing was to figure out how never to leave. So while some of us want to really expand and go elsewhere, these people never want to leave. So I want to start again with the ancient story of many of the entities that arrived that started causing a great deal of trouble, but the trouble was through knowledge. Now, it's no mystery to the adept that the teachers are the trees. And let me explain why. If you want to make someone smart, there's a tree. If you want to make someone really strong, there's a tree. If you want to make someone fall in love, there's a tree. And I'm not talking about magic. I'm talking about there are trees, even if you want to make a person look young, you can pull the extract right out of the tree and give the person the tree and they'll start looking young again. Now this was known as the tree, the knowledge from the giants, what they call a fallen one when they chop the tree down. But the reality is that the ancestors, in preliminary phases, after they came out of slime, which is more closer to the real generative principles like the seminal fluids, etc., once coming out of the slime really were in the trees and the garden. This is why there is no initiation and ritual that there's not a tree consecrated to it. In every degree of even masonry, there's a specific tree that brings you through that initiation. Because there are elements within that tree that actually equal the next stage that you're about to enter into. The unfortunate part is just like baby, there's ivy, which is a symbol of trident or a fleur-de-lis or a bee.
Brother, we're starting to get some static on your end.
Okay, so let me do this first. I heard earlier there may have been static in this unit here when I was all right back in, so let me just go ahead and call right back in, but I think that's a way to fix it.
All right, go ahead, brother. And while you're calling back in, we will take a quick pause. And excellent. Okay, family, we will take a quick pause and wait for Brother Sevan to call back in. We could take care of our technical difficulties here. So just sit tight, beloved family, and we will be right back. And we are back, family, and tonight we have with us Brother Sevan. Had to give Brother a chance to clear up our technical difficulties here, but we are back. Brother Sevan, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I was able to definitely get myself together over here.
Excellent. So please, brother, feel free to continue with this tremendous lecture.
Okay, definitely. I think that, within the conversation, I've been kind of everywhere, so I would hope to get this more cohesive for everyone within this next hour. So, by all means, let us go into this. I just want to, again, to let everyone know, to go through Earth's history is quite difficult because it's expansive within itself. So I generally like to just brush on the key points of things that occurred that really began to alter or change the path that we're going on. But if you yourself personally want to follow Earth's history, then you can always follow it through its currency. And this is the amazing fact, but if you follow what we used as money through different periods of time, then you'll understand what man and woman were worshiping as God. And like I said, there's an artificial level to our reality when it's externalized, especially extremely externalized like we're dealing with now. And so what happens is that if you notice in the beginning, the symbol of the cow and the horn was actually one of the first symbols that was connected to what we call money today. And the reason for that is of course, you had to trade, how many cows and how many oxen you had, which are actually called aurochs. How many of them you had determined whether you got the house you want or whether you got the girl you want or whatever your pursuit was. So you have to see that the first currency was hidden under the symbol of a bull, and the bull or horns, because that symbolism also was related to the moon, and the moon and the cows connected together had everything to do with fertility because the moon was kicking off a great deal of magnetic energy, which it even does today, and that grows everything, okay? So you have to see how the ancient people tied in the horns and the bulls to fertility only, not to all of the degradation of what has been taken into now. I'm just going to take you through history, through currencies, so you can see how the first part of the symbolism has to do with a great level of our reproduction, expansion, our food, our necessities, etc. And then when the twisted mind takes it, it then becomes the God, and then it becomes it needs to be sacrificed to, and then it becomes the devil. So we can definitely see that, again, taking it from the beginning with the horn god, or what is known as the first symbol that became the first letter of the language, which is A, or Aleph, is when you turn it upside down, it is actually horns, and that symbol is a cow. The bottom part, which looks like a triangle to us now, is a cow face. So that is the symbol of also what the ancients knew as the beginning of this particular planetary process, which they say came from the constellation Taurus, which is also the bull in the sky. So you have to understand that the ancient symbolism would always zoomorphi everything that they were experiencing, because there was an animal correspondence to what they were experiencing here on Earth. It was only until generations and generations later, when someone else attempted to interpret that symbolism and especially claim that symbolism for their own, that it started becoming misinterpreted. So the other thing that with this horn symbolism was also the symbol of the king. That, believe it or not, that the word Moloch, which is actually MLK or MLCH, actually relates to why that Martin Luther was the king. And that why in Ethiopia there is the king, whose also acronym is MLK, that's King Melech or Menelik, who was also known as the king and went under the symbol of the horns long before the Vikings started doing it themselves. So if you understand that the primordial symbolism is so rich with getting you to understand the story of here on Earth, instead of looking at the back and forth conflicts, look at the money. Because even up until this very point, if you'll notice that if you go into most of the foreign countries now, the money is made out of plastic. You'll now see why we're moving into a plastic age and why plastic is becoming our currency. And why before, at a certain point, especially dealing with the papacy or the Pope, that paper was also another level of currency, because trees, what could be derived from trees, as I explained to you before, like all of these different potions and all of this wood and all of the different things that trees can do, and how malleable trees are, meaning they could be easily manipulated or manipulated in the hands of Yod. And that was the preference. So you can also see how we've gone through stages such as when gold or when iron, shekels, and these kind of currencies were the currency of preference, and how that had to do with us struggling and going through different times. So I found this to be an interesting fact, that if you trace down the currency, then you'll actually find the quote-unquote the God. So now I've pulled over 52,000 pieces of currency in this world today, and started noticing some very odd things, mainly the symbolism, but the geometry that was being used in the minting of these dollar bills. Now, it's also no mystery that there are certain symbols, also called talismans, that hold some kind of what they call magical power or magical sway. And this is because the symbols that are used and the names that are used are, once again, the Kabbalistic evocations of various energies. So it takes an individual to be fully schooled in Kabbalah to put together a proper talisman. But all of the money that is passed and circulated through everyone's hands daily is heavily laden with this kind of work, of talisman work. So where does it come from? Meaning that who is really designing the money, and what does it actually mean? Like, what is this all about? What is the God that they trust? And that, when I started asking that question, I was confronted in much of the symbolism with a bull god. And it was very interesting to me because it's obviously right in front of you. Like, actually, it's bi-bull, which means two bulls. It's not just a guy you fight that Mike Tyson fights. Tyson means serpent. Bull, he has to fight him. It's all in everything that there is some type of connection with some kind of bull god known as Baal. And so I started pouring through the knowledge and saying, is this just, a wives' tale or something like that? Or what is really going on? Why does this keep popping up everywhere? What is the real truth to this? And so I started finding out that what occurred on this planet before what they call the flood is such a key to understanding what is actually going on the spiritual plane and who's keeping up a lot of mischief. If you don't have it, none of this stuff ever opens up to you. So let me explain to you how this planet was really developed, especially with its fertility. The Earth is seen as a female, not because it's not androgynous, but because it's a receiver. As I said, with magnets, there's either an entry point or exit point. That's it. So Earth is a receiver. So all of the seeds penetrate Earth. All of the masculine forces, if you want to call it that, penetrate Earth. What are those forces? Light is a major force. When the rays come down, as you see in the Egyptian teaching, the rays are what fertilizes the land. Then also the water. The water is the rain, as they call it, rain of the king. It's the energy that comes down and it goes all the way deep into Earth. It seeps down deep so that it can fertilize the seed. So what we start to see is that rich in the symbolism, deep in the symbolism, it actually starts to explain how we got here. But more deeper than that, even at times, the tampering with life. And so, again, as I've already covered before, you have to understand that the entities that they're calling Nephilim or Rephaim or giants are synonymous with the trees. But another deep level of knowledge shows that the entities that we often call serpents or snakes have been, in many cases, related to trees also. It seems to be in none of the symbolism where there's a serpent that a tree is not somewhere around. So, again, in seeking what was the connection to all of this, I started to realize that, okay, wait a minute, they said the serpent had knowledge. The tree also has the knowledge. The tree contains this, et cetera, et cetera. You can get the information from this. So I started, again, putting it all together, and I started realizing, okay, this is exactly what happened. What happened is that the energies that were coming from above were so fertile that anything that the seeds that came from above were so fertile that anything that they landed on, it impregnated. And there were many things that this whole earth was continuously impregnated. All of the seeds, all of the orifices that needed to be filled here on earth were filled. However, what you have is you have many of the spirits, especially the larger spirits, that needed to be put somewhere. They needed to have bodies or vessels too. And many of these spirits ended up going inside of the larger animals, and that's where the whole, even Leviathan was seen at times as a whale. You see that they are obviously, in a lot of the symbolism, especially in the link that I sourced, they're idolizing the cow itself as being alive. But when you go into the ancient knowledge, you'll actually find that there were these part man, part beast, which is what it pretty much says, part man, part beast entities all throughout Earth. And the reason why this had occurred was because the seeds that were originally coming into this planet, as I explained, anything that fell on it fertilized. Now, many of these mixtures, and you can also see it as DNA, many of these mixtures would be like a lion mixed with a snake. Different mixtures, especially once the man comes into play. So what you actually find out is that this was a time where there was, they say, a great upheaval on Earth. And there needed to be something done about the situation because the blending of what had been taking place on Earth, the entry of the Holy of Holies, the actual fertilization of this planet, which was also seen as the Holy of Holies, was causing a major situation. And so we're now living in a time where we don't see any of those entities on the physical level that used to exist then. But if you understand what the occult is really about, what the spirits that they're actually calling on are those spirits that were in physical bodies then as, let's say, half man, half cow, or half Auric, half man, half serpent, but now only a spirit. And again, this is the 100% reason why a lot of the connections can't be made, because there are things going on that you wouldn't even believe. Unless you understand the geometry, you understand that each animal's eyes is a portal. The configuration of the cat's eyes is because of the covenant that was made with the Egyptians and why they have this huge ark, which is a cat out there with the library underneath, basically, that they talk about. But why they made their covenant with that, why the dog's eyes are circular, why the iguana's eyes are in the geometry that they're in, what the configurations of the portals really are, why the goat's eye is sideways, why your Uranus, the planet, is sideways. I found out that there was a reason why all of these animals are actually here. And it's because these animals are the portals. They are actually the composites of what the body is made out of. The body is the hybridization. These animals now are domesticated. The actual creation of us was only on a soul level. When we took physical form and came into physical bodies, we came into these, some people say we came, some people say we were forced. All it really shows is that we're attracted here. We enter this earth like a light or an eye that we find pleasing. And then the moment that we go through here as spirits and we come into the portal, we come out in 5-based bodies, according to the level and the degree of our spirit. So if you're an intelligent spirit, you come out as one of the apex beings, which is a human. If you're an animalistic spirit, and as they tell you, there's a falling down the ladder, meaning there's more of a collapse in the DNA. If you let them destroy your DNA, they can put you in an animal vessel. You'll be running around like a cat. Some people think that this is maybe funny and not possible, but it's all organics. See, what's happened is that they switched everyone else over to this plastic and this silicone, or as I call it, the silicon scion or psi, actually something that when you put it in your organic body, then it comes alive. It needs your energy, or it needs you to engage it in order to interact. It interacts perfectly with the carbon-based structure. When they put everyone over to the plastic, they kept using organics. And this is why I have to denote who is they. There is a force here that understands all this knowledge. They understand the light. They understand you can make anything out of photons. That a real person that travels the universe does not have luggage. You're not asking, where can I store my bags? Everything that you need, wherever you go, as far as your necessities are concerned, can be generated immediately. It's called spontaneous generation based on necessity. You don't want to have a lot of stuff when you're traveling through the universe. So this also becomes, again, the secret, because we generate photon energy. When we bring in children, we bring in more life. We bring in another sun or another soul. So the sun is not a man. The sun is a dynamo of energy. It has to create a positive and negative pole. Not to mention, why are all words like male, masculine, machismo, and all the other words that supposed to be man begin with ma? But ma is a woman, right? So what's happening with our words? What we're realizing is we're getting confused. We've been confused, actually. It's called Babel. Now, this is the other indication that the entities that you see in these religious books are actually the malevolent ones. And the reason is because even the confusion of our language has created the breaking of our DNA, but it's also a riddle. Because the language is the DNA. They say DNA is information. Information is language. DNA seems to read out just like a language. But actually your language is confused, right? According to this scripture, a God came down and confused your language with another group of gods. It said, let us go down and confuse them. But, of course, 2 books previous to that, it says, I'm not the author of confusion. Sounds like this God's confused. See, people have to see that they've been had. That's the first state of awakening, to tell you the truth. The first thing you say when you awake is, how long have I been asleep? If you don't acknowledge that you're actually asleep, then you're only in another emotional bath with yourself. meaning talking about what you like, what you don't like. You're eating on a tree, sick underneath the tree. Like the reality is that our expansion of who we really are, which I've even experienced on this dimension before, it's something that can be encased here. It's not in the sky. They always want to tell you it's on Saturn, it's on Mars. You need to you need to become Mercurian, Hermetic. It's on the moon, everywhere but here. But all those planets are inside of us, so you can see the gig. The gig is up, basically. They want to point us outside. It's over there. It's over. Come get it. It's from us. It's all inside. Your money, your substance is connected to your energy. You have low energy, you have no money, you have no substance. Now, these people, to get it very clear, because some people want to say, well, how are they mastering? Because they're using spirits. They're binding spirits. But even the deeper part is those spirits are you at times. Meaning that if you're actually working, it doesn't matter why you need to work and all of that. You're working, so you're working for them. That's just what's happening. So what we have to start realizing is not, oh my goodness, I'm not doing that, and then there's denial, but okay, I need to get ready to make a move. I need to see this for what this really is. My time is getting wasted. I need to be figuring out the great arcanum so that I can jump off my body and rebond myself. My entire magnetic field is in decay. I'm sick. I'm not even perpetual anymore. What's up? What's going on? When you start acting like that with yourself, you start becoming Lord over your body. Now, remember, the word religion comes from the root word religare, meaning to bind, to tie down, or to tie back. Religion, it's called. So I'm going to actually explain to you what happens when individuals join or get teachings and knowledge from stars. What happens is that notice how even the most intelligent individuals at times that believe in one particular system, let's say it's Islam, or believe in another system, let's say it's Qualiism, they can't seem to talk too long without giving reverence to their star. Oh, the Illuminati taught me this, or the Mason, this is what I learned at the Masonic Lodge. Yeah, where did they learn it though from? Where did they get it? Are they saying that it's theirs? That's how I believe about everything also here on the earth. Somebody says that it's theirs, come on man, none of this stuff is ours. Nobody can say this is mine. I could cut it out. It's not gonna, it doesn't work. So what happens is that we can see that the religious seal on others, because some people say, well, what really happens behind the scenes? What happens is a person becomes sealed in that chakra by that chakra closing, meaning that if you're dealing in a root chakra lunar-based religion, which is every religion where the angel Gabriel came and announced the birth of whoever you're supposed to worship, then that chakra will be sealed by the one you begin to worship. And what is underneath that seal is a hole that looks very similar to the key, but is actually the actual layout geometrically of the essences of who you really are. Not to make it complex, but it's your eye in the shape of your specific eye. And none are the same. But when the seal is over it, your eye is closed and you become veiled. So if you understand now the veiled knowledge, if you understand there's no veil, the veiled knowledge is when somebody's telling you something directly and you can't even see exactly what it means. This means that when you see constant inconsistencies in the religious and the holy book, then, or it's still running you around in circles and you haven't got any real results, that actually means that you're veiled, you're sealed. So we have to see that this type of behavior is why we've been held back. And I already gave you the solution in the beginning of this conversation, but let me show you how that all comes into play. Now, once again, how the ancient teachings were set up is that our bodies were the temple or the sanctuary, and they were to be kept holy. Now, what holy is really about is about being whole, meaning that there should be no division. It shouldn't be a D. The D is a half of a circle, by the way. That's why all dangerous and devilish words, the demonic stuff or the dumb stuff, always starts with D. It's a half of a circle. It means you're only getting half of the truth. So how your whole system is developed, the holy system, is that you have to understand all of the components or understand all the components that you're made out of. And so that's, of course, what we're going to be going through here on this conversation and have been going through. That, again, to make it clear, before it comes into the flesh, it's a spirit first. So to start dealing with yourself, you have to deal with yourself on a spiritual level. To understand spiritual components, you're getting into the etheric forces. You have to understand that all etheric forces eat ether also, meaning that just like when you're in the physical body, you eat physical things. When your etheric body eats etheric things. So what you feed it, just like what you feed your body, and it doesn't, of course, it eats the essences from crystal. It takes in and cycles that energy. It takes the energy from the sun like a plant. It takes the magnetic energy from the moon. It takes all of these essences and it brings it in and it consumes it. And of course, we have this layover where all the knowledge and information is being interpreted to us by somebody who is saying that the energy belongs to them. Meaning that once you go into deeper levels of energy dynamics with the body, it always ties you into one of these religions where there's supposed to be Sat or supposed to be Jehovah or someone over it. So that's called hacking, by the way. That's when an Eve angel, which means it stands between you and the Most High, is taking the energy or filtering the energy that you're supposed to be receiving. Now, to see it truly for what it is, your organs in your body are like filters. And actually, they are filters, excuse me. And when those filters are dirty, you don't see things clearly. When the chakra is, same thing with the chakra center. When it's powered down and the eye is closed, you don't see through that eye. So you see how you can either work with the body or you can work with the chakra to fix the problem. So this is what I call the mind-body-soul system. There's a way for you, if you cannot overcome a situation that you're dealing with that you know is causing you a problem, especially ailments and diseases, from the body, work on the spirit. If you fail with the spirit, work on the mind. There is a way to come at whatever type of ailment or infirmity that you're actually dealing with. Now we're playing offense, not defense. Now we're working on the reward system, not the punishment system, meaning that when you see yourself uncoiled and all your information completely updated and you're updated to who you are, the feeling is immense. It's like someone that came and told you won $10 million. See, the secret behind humans also is that we can generate energy on ideas. So you say, what are you talking about? If you knew that you won some money, you jump and scream, run all over the house that night. You're not even going to sleep. And this is even if you came from a day's work, right? So what does this tell you? It tells you that your mind is strong enough to where it can generate energy off just the idea that you're going to get some energy. So why can we not do that for ourselves all the time? And that's why I told you that the major key to this is that with your body, that you have to be in total balance with yourself, total agreement with yourself. Like I tend to not like to use the word love because it actually is the word Jove, which is Jupiter, but you're in total love with yourself. All these external things, like remember, I'm not going to be here forever. None of us are. The message is very simple. Like I have a really unique way of buffering out this message. It's just now I'm on to something else. I'm showing pictures and everything, so the radio is a little bit behind for me now. But the reality is that it's so simple. I already told people, I tell people every show that I have, the highest level of knowledge that I have, but the most simplest stuff is still already been revealed. It's just as simple as I said earlier, that the wheel of your body is off of balance. Put it back together. Study bioenergetics. Study something that is actually going to give you power. It will remove you eventually from whatever is binding you. It's all vibratory frequency. The only reason why a person stays in a lower state is because they're vibrating in that frequency. Once they raise the vibration, which is not done by just listening to some tones and frequencies, no, you have to put in some work. You actually have to go back into the body and be like, look, You have to command the body is what I'm saying. You have to speak to it as if it's even separate than you, especially when it's not acting correctly. Now, understand that the war in this world is being waged, of course, on the children. This is why now all the movies, there's the child soldiers there, and everything is like what the adults used to do, but they're just using the children to do it. And I guess, to me, Lennon Honor is the greatest at ever explaining anything to do with children and the dynamics of it, especially with what's going on with this energy. But a word to the wise is this. They're doing it to everyone. This is not a color thing. You got white kids mutilating themselves to death off of stuff they're seeing on MTV, jumping off ladders on their nuts and all sorts of stuff. You got black people magnetizing everyone else with their melanin and leading them down the wrong level. Because you see that the melanin obviously is a magnet itself. But what are you magnetizing people to do? And then you see also the Bollywood totally destroy India with Dr. Bean ×5 in the new movie, meaning that the movies are so silly. Nobody can take it serious. Nobody's taking life serious. You see the entire Orient destroyed by Gangnam Style, by Psy. You see, they name their characters exactly what the Kabbalistic and occult symbolism is related to them. Now, Psy is Shin. Okay? The Psy symbol is shaped the same way the Shin symbol is, which is shaped the same way a pitchfork is, which is shaped the same way a fleur-de-lis is, which is shaped the same way a bee is when you turn it upside down, which is shaped the same way as an ivy is. So the symbolism is replete on the dimension. They cannot get away without using the symbolism. It is their brand. Now, I think we need to talk a little bit about the mark of the beast. And then I'm going to start taking some questions here. The mark of the beast is when your DNA reads that the beast has been tampering with it. Now, I'll explain to you what this means from the deepest sense. Right now, we're on most people are on two-strand DNA. There are a great deal of people that are being converted to PNA, which is three-strand DNA. When you go through occult teachings or any type of spiritual experience, you gain more lines of DNA. This is called a ring. That's what they call Lord of the Rings, is how many rings or tree rings do you have in your DNA. But if you see very clearly, and I'm getting just a little bit of feedback here, but if you see very clearly that your level of knowledge, or actually, excuse me, I'm catching some feedback here on the line, Curtis. I'm not sure if you're actually hearing that.
Oh, no, okay. It's fine. Yeah, it's fine over here.
Okay. I was just catching a little feedback here, but anyway, what I'm just trying to really get to the point here on is that the DNA is actually of the whole entire component to what we're dealing with here. And what happens is with the new PNA, which is when human beings come in contact with too much plastic, that is the third string of DNA. It's not still a very advanced being. There's something about the third planet and the threes and the Bs and all of these different things or the E in energy, et cetera, that is causing a situation where we need to get ready to progress out of that. I'll just say it like that. I don't want to demonize it, but we are getting ready to progress out of this whole three thing. But if you notice all around the dimension, that symbolism, whether it's a W or whether it's an M or whether it's a 3 or whether it's the fleur-de-lis or whether it's the ivy or whether it's the three prongs of the devil or whether it's the Shin in Zionism, or Zionism, which is called basically Shinism, or that entire symbolism that you see everywhere on the dimension, we're transcending that. And it doesn't mean that we're going to 4 either, because people like to do the counting in order. It actually means that we're moving out of numbers. Because here's the other secret. Numbers are actually the hidden language of power on this dimension. But it is a very, very disastrous thing for us. And I will explain. When everyone starts to become a number, then the entity that is controlling the dimension uses numbers as its language. Now, the only thing that uses numbers as its language is actually a computer. And the problem with this is it's very insensitive. It only sees you as a number. You're 543692086, basically. So that equates to a non-sensitivity because you don't see the person as they really are. You just see them as a number. So the secret also is that what the Pythagorean Brotherhood was really doing is going into all of these countries and trying to turn their language into numbers. so that they can feed it into the computer, basically, and find out the codes and the rhythms and the combinations behind where they came from. Again, this is the deeper information, but you just stumble upon this stuff once you start understanding how it all works and you start tracing it back. Now, the reason why numbers is the hidden language, because right now in this world, if a person knows numbers very well, especially how to calculate a septidecimal, then they don't have financial problems. Now, here's the interesting part. I'm not just talking about numbers as far as math is concerned. I'm talking about numbers as far as the symbols that are also used when a person's writing out a very complex mathematical equation. Now, here's the funny part. Many people that actually think that they don't really understand a lot about math, but have been studying a deep amount of the occult knowledge, especially with the symbols. Now, go to Wikipedia and look, just type in, in Google, complex mathematical, or all mathematical symbols. And then go to the Wikipedia page, and you'll see that all the mathematical symbols that are being used are actually occult symbols. Like the cross means divisor in math. So the same thing that it actually does on the physical plane, it also is set up to do in math. The secret, and of course this cross is drawn in a specific way. You have to see the way that it's drawn, and then you can trace it back to the cross of Lorraine. But the real symbolism behind the cross and why Earth is assembled astrologically as an equilateral cross is because this is known as the place where our opposites meet. And what I mean by that is that notice how with the symbol of a cross that you have something going up, something going down, something going left, something going right. So that means that none of these energies are going in the same direction, meaning that they're not like each other. But there's this cross point in between, and somehow they can meet there. This is, again, a secret to the symbolism. So Earth is known. That's why it's always like when you start asking yourself, well, how important is Earth really and how big is this? Oh, this is big, baby. Every single entity, the ones that are even not like each other at all, are actually here together. And because of that, that means that there is no limit to what you can find here and who you can find here. So that's, of course, why there's a huge game with keeping the information that people contain suppressed inside of them, keep them shut up, not activating their chakras and uncoiling the energy and information of where they've been throughout the cosmos. So hopefully that brings people to a level where they start to see clearly. And again, to give you another deeper symbolism about, another deeper explanation about symbolism, a square, which is not like a circle. A circle is a constant. It's not divided. But what a square is when you look at a square and you put a line right in between the square, you can make two triangles. Now, if you take those two triangles and you move them on top of each other, once again, you get that Star of David. So it shows you that what a square is a square is duality. So that's why many of these worlds that are created are based on specifically this symbolism, which is the same symbol you find in water, the same symbol that you find in light. Because even on a deeper level, how the actual world is created, not controlled, but created, is based on this symbolism that what I say is the so-called controllers are using as what they say is their symbol or what they created. So I guess at this time, is there any questions, brother? Because there's a lot. I just didn't really have an anchor point today in what to exactly talk about. But, it's just an immense amount of information, and I would really like people to get a hold of really in that video format. Also, of course, we have some videos, a lot of videos coming out, and there's even one up now about this.
Okay, well, I have a quick question, brother, and if anyone else has a quick question, you could either type it out in the chat room or call into the switchboard, 646-649-1987, and press number 1 on your keypad so we can see you on the switchboard. But my question is, Brother Sevan, is that we're coming towards the end of 2012, and everyone's making a big deal about December 21st, 2012. That something really big is about to happen, with regard to changes on the planet, changes in the energy of the planet, whatever. In your opinion, what do we have to look forward to as we come towards the end of 2012?
For sure. I mean, I would definitely want to answer that from both perspectives. I would want to say first that, of course, 2012 can happen any day for anyone. It is definitely the awakening of the chakra center, and I think that many people have been experiencing that lineup within, and that's also been lining them up with information. But to understand it from the ancient level, especially from those that followed that knowledge, was just definitely the Olmec and the Mayans. What they have described this energy as is that I'm not even sure if it lines up to their perfect day, by the way, of the 21st, but that during a certain period that there is 8 minutes, as they say, of full consciousness on the planet, meaning that everyone has this epiphany and this special moment. And that generally what they used to do is that they would store this lined up energy, because it was associated with the lineup of the planet. They would store that energy of consciousness inside of the pyramidal structures here on this planet. And then what they would do is, for the individuals that did not get that awakening, they would take them into those pyramids, and then they would have those experiences of their awakening. And, so we don't know if this information is what part of the timeline that it's actually coming from, because I still see that some people have entered into many of these ancient structures, especially the pyramids, and then had some type of past life regression or experience. But it is they were containing this energy. And I guess this is also a really good point to bring up, that now what the cube does is it actually contains energy, and that's why they're marching around a black cube as far as out there at the Kaaba. And they say that it's dark or the stone in the cube is dark because of the sins of the people, and it's absorbing those sins. You'll find the phylactery, or tefillin, which is what the Judaistic puts on his forehead. It's also shaped as a cube. So what a cube is, of course, when you turn it on its axis, is actually a pyramid, or a four-sided pyramid. And so what this is really about is that they were storing the energies and the essence of full awakening within the pyramidal system, and apparently on the 21st of this year, that is supposed to be the maximum point of awakening. But in between then, since we're so close, the awakening for many individuals should start, or actually not should start, but should have already started. And if they find that there's no energy or awakening already occurring, that means that they are actually in the base pillar state, meaning it's their black pillar is the first pillar of the ziggurat, meaning that the frequency that they're actually holding is not allowing them to conduct the energy so that they can become sensitive to which is basically photon light being emitted from other stars, which contain the information of quickening. So what we really are seeing, and what they're saying will maximize on the 21st, is your own personal story starting to become fully, you start to become fully aware of. And then all of course, the preventing of this has been designed to kick in now, which is basically a hijacking of the symbolism, an excessive amount of distraction, a lot of a bad association, meaning through the movies, a kid comes out, his name is Noah, or his name is Enoch, or something of this nature, or mainly David, and this starts to make the hero change the names of the hero, anybody but you, basically. So all of the different diverting that has been worked on so much on this dimension and keeping us confused is really being honed into not just 2012, not just the 21st, but actually right now. For people to understand the hierarchy works on watches, meaning that if you notice in most occult systems, especially the Pauline art, there's an angel for every hour. So, and that angel has other beings that are under them. So this is how they've been able to successfully keep most of the people in the world, at least 95% to maybe 90, I would hope. It wouldn't be as bad as 95%, but 90% of the people engaged in something else that has nothing to do with whether they're going to really expand through this. Breaking through that, what we have an opportunity to do is actually get the information and the application that's needed, so that we can become the transmitters of this energy. Like, remember, what the whole idea is to store the energy inside the pyramid. And because we know that there's no external pyramid, and people have to remember the beginning of this conversation, that means that there were going to be many people during this time that were going to store all the information of awakening within themselves. And then the individuals that didn't awaken, they were going to be able to transmit either the information or the energy to them so that they can awake. This is very similar to how orgone works. The orgone energy and anyone that comes in that field, it begins to vacuum out basically the negative energy. Well, we're human orgone, so an individual that actually goes through the awakening process, which is, again, been available on the planet, but is opposed to apex around this time, can actually begin to awake other individuals into the full stage of realization. So what we're really dealing with is, remember, there's a counter plan to our awakening, which is known as we could just call it Operation Goldman. What's happening is that if you look into the cabals and you see where they're really at, they're working with the 7-pointed star, which is OTO, the Queen of England, 007. You notice in the new 007 movie, they bring him back. He says he's come back from the dead, and he's coming back because they need him. You have to understand 007 is Tubal Cain. Tubal Cain did incarnate through John Dee, the sorcerer. So what you're really dealing with is they're working with a particular kind of magic, or as they call it, magic, in this particular time, and it's Cronian, which is actually, of course, every chakra is called a chronos, or a wheel of time, so it doesn't actually identify Saturn as the culprit. What you're dealing with, again, is a plan for a Superman, or actually what is known as Übermensch, which means actually super witch. Uber is witch in German, so Übermensch means a super witch. This means basically an individual that has an extreme level of occult power, and it's bent on to the dark side, because wick means to bend, as in wicker. So what happens is they have this idea of bringing out this Superman from the sky, like they drop the Red Bull guy down from the sky. These supermen that basically come and show Earth that they have this power, and then they're going to be themselves completely controlled by what appears to be Sat and Lama, different factions. Again, to understand the word Satan and Leviathan is to break these words up. Tan means to take in the essence. So just like when you go tanning, like they say, oh, let's go get a suntan, because you're taking in the essence of the sun. So Satan means you're taking in the essence of Sa. So there's many different kinds of tanning or taking in the essence of different things on this planet, just to clarify what the word means. But there, of course, is a group that is still bent on controlling the whole world, and they're at the advent of them wanting to bring in this control is with showing everyone that they have this special power. But the thing is, it's not per se so special. Everyone can activate if they understand how to balance their magnetic field. But if it happens to be a group of individuals who've done that and now are coming out in public eye, then they can easily become the new leaders of this society. So this is actually the reality that we're counteracting, is so that humanity goes into the full realization that all is self, not into another level of idolization with the tree known as Awaz. Like, remember, in the movie Avatar, the tree that they're worshiping, even though it's supposed to be the one the good people are worshiping, but remember, in these kind of movies, there's no good one in there. There's only bad and worse. The reality is they're worshiping a tree named Awaz. Now, anytime they show you the symbolism, they always show you, whether it's a pentagram or a hexagram, something coming from the middle. This means something coming from the portal. So in past, they would show like a horn god coming out of there, sometimes Bacchus coming out of there, meaning that they want to bring this energy into the dimension. Now they're showing an alien, a gray, who's known as Lam or Awash, a dark llama, in this portal getting ready to come out into Earth. And this is, of course, where the whole gray motif, the large head, small body, etc., connects to a degenerated fourth-dimensional parasite. So what happens is that this becomes like, I don't know, I think the universe likes to play this thing out like the craziest game ever and watches us triumph every time. But it gets really serious down to the wire. Now, here's another thing. Everything about the sports, and I'm glad we're like looser on the conversation, because earlier I was like hot and, everything. But the thing is that every sport that you see has a specific configuration. Football is 11 versus 11. Soccer is 11 versus 11. So what do you see on your clock? 11-11. Because it's a dualistic time code. It's all one, basically, in conflict with each other. That's what 11 is. 11 is the birth of 5 and 6, or the pentagram and the hexagram together, or Megan star together, make 11. So now you see the soccer field is configured into phi. That's why everything is always a rectangle, and when you draw phi out, you draw it as the rectangle and the spiral, and then you separate it into quadrants. So And then the ball, notice the soccer ball is pentagrams enlaced with hexagrams, which is the geometry that they really want the world to be in. And they've always been trying to mold the world into this rudimentary pentagram, hexagram shape. And then what the man is doing is told to kick his ball, which is basically his semen, his seed, into a net, which is actually a trap. You see what I mean? So all of the configuration behind the sports, or serpent ports, have a lot to do with wasting time, which is Cronus's job. Cronus moves, or Saturn moves very slow, slower than all the other planets. So, and always seen as old. Cain is a wanderer. He doesn't have a land. And so this also brings up, and again, I think I pretty much answered the question about the awakening. It can happen now. 2012, it gets stronger. Every full moon, it actually gets stronger. But to see the opposing currents that are keeping everyone from the full realization, you have to realize that our knowledge has been hijacked. Now, notice how that same hexagram, or I just have to call it that, I guess now, the six-pointed star, actually was in the hand of the dark-skinned Dravidian before it was in the hands of anyone under the title Sri Yantra. Now, everyone knows the dark-skinned Dravidian with the basically white folks' hair is the combination between the black man and the white man in the same body. And that these were known as Nagus, or Naga, the Kushite, the one who united Upper and Lower Egypt. Like, people just have to really read sometimes between the lines before all this stuff was hijacked. But the covenant rests with those people, and they'll never say it doesn't. You go to Ethiopia right now, the covenant's ours. It was originally our fathers. It was the Ethiopian woman that Abraham was with, blah, blah, blah. So they'll go and they'll tell you everything because their wisdom was hijacked by Israel. Because Israel is actually a composition of most of the captives, mainly Gypsies and Russians, and many other individuals that, I'm not saying anything negative about them, but they were captives first in Babylon, where they worship Isis under the Venusian current, known as Europa, the black snake. And then they went to the Ra, the sun god, and got captured over there and then got expelled from there. By the way, remember, the Lower Egyptians and even other Egyptians kicked these people out of their land, but they took their religion when they left. Their major control point, by the way. So you have to really understand that these are people that don't have a home and are wandering and are very bitter because they can't find a home. Many say that originally it was because they were lepers, which has nothing to do with being white, but actually an infection that takes place within the blood. Then there was El, which they actually hijacked, from the Hindus, because El was Saturn, and his refractor is the moon, meaning that all Saturnalian energy works in conjunction with the moon, because the moons and the arcs, the archangel of the moon is controlled. It's basically an entire machine in itself of manifestation, but already being controlled by a hierarchy. So when you go and try to use some of these tools and some of these symbols, it becomes just as dangerous as using occult books where there's not that many of them. And this is, again, another secret that many people don't know about. But the breaking these spirits Kabbalistically in the astral plane is like PlayStation for these people, and it's been like that for a long time. So what they do is they make up these Kabbalistic creatures, and then they put their sigil down in books, because these creatures can scratch out their symbol on the floor once they're evoked or tied into a pentagram or a hexagram. And then they take these creatures and they put the symbols of them in a book, and then they sell that book for like $50,000, $60,000 to only 4, 5, or 6 people. And then those people are the ones that have the control of those spirits, if you, again, want to know what's going on in the Cabal. And then what happens is that book is then published, through the occult networks, and then 20, 30, 40, 100, 200, 300 people buy the book and are not, even being dark occultists themselves, aware, and this is dark occultists, there's no honor amongst these, by the way, that they're not aware that the first 5 people who bought the book are the ones actually controlling the new spirits that were created. So do you see how, again, the creation, the language of power has the ability to mix up basically Mr. Potato Head on the astral plane, and then the only thing that is left is to figure out either just to let this thing serve you on the astral plane, or to figure out how to get it into physical reality. So the whole idea behind rock music, which is also inorganic, and music like that Gaga's spitting out, which of course is Saturn's moon, is to actually get this person's DNA, but then PNA, because they're getting hybridized, into taking in this weird, contorted, distorted spirit, which rock, of course, distorts your entire molecular structure, into this body. So remember, all these benevolent people that are running around the planet can't take in these spirits anyway. So that's why it also seemed like these are like the baby boomers without no jobs and don't know what they're going to do because they can't do what the new kids are doing and act that immoral. But at the same time, they don't bond well with the ancient people and their ancient cultures and sacrifices. So they're like stuck in between. So people have to see, look, this is what's really going on. And that's why I said in the beginning of this conversation is if the individuals, especially that are hearing this conversation all the time, one doesn't move into taking the knowledge in order to activate themselves, we're going to have a situation. So that should automatically prompt us to do what we need to do so we don't have a situation. And, of course, that's what I work with every single day is cracking into the schoolie, not making any real assumptions until I can connect it everywhere. But once I connect it, by all means, know what the hell is going on. You got these people hanging chickens over their heads in Jerusalem, imagining that the chicken is going to draw the sins out of their body. Now, let me show you the danger of this scapegoat or sacrifice that has become now this problem, this building up problem. Now, according to many of the doctrines, if you get involved with whatever religion or whatever, then the primary entity of that religion will take on your sins. Now, how this manifests in Christianity, of course, is Jesus can die for your sins, even though the book says no man can die for another sin. But I guess they skipped over that. Same thing in basically all the religions. They tell you that this is not a real process where someone can basically absorb your negative sins. Now, see how they have themselves doing it around the Kaaba? You march it around it 7 times, and then all your sins are forgiven 1,000-fold. Then you get the beautiful damsel with the beautiful eye. Wait a minute. What's happening here? You can't absolve sins by marching around a cube, but they're doing it. Now, notice in the Old Testament, it actually has a ritual when the temple of Jehovah is consecrated, and I'm saying the corrupted version of the name, but when it was actually consecrated, then there was known as a ceremony where the priest would put his hands on the horn of a goat, and then he would allow the sins from the tribe to run through him and then into the horns of the goat, and then that goat would then be released into the forest, in which the goat was named as Azazel. But this begs one to ask the question right away is, if this thing is eating sins, or at least everyone believes it is, how strong is it really getting off of our sins? And that's why this entity is known as an accuser, because if you actually buy into one of these systems where you think someone else is going to be able to die for what you did that you haven't balanced out and rectified, then it comes when it's time for you to transcend, and it accuses you. It basically says, look, you never handled this. I know, because I ate it. It's a real deal here. You can't really just go in and out of lives doing what you want to, but they would like to make you think that you can. See, it's almost like if you're in a vehicle and it's moving at light speed, which is how fast much of us move, especially on a solar level and with our soul, but you hit something, that means you hit something at light speed. So hitting something at light speed is going to be definitely different than hitting something at 1 mile an hour. So we have to also see that especially when we're dealing with spiritual things, we can do certain things or make certain moves that can end up allowing us to spin out of control for a prolonged period of time. And how a period of time of spinning out of control, there's a name for that, and it's called klipo. There's an actual name for when it doesn't really work out for you and you're basically in this state of sleep and not able to wake up and you don't know what you're going to do about it. They say that this is the drawback of especially Earth. The klipo of Earth is stasis, meaning time. Now, notice how everyone here dies, okay, according to the knowledge and information. But yet nobody here, or actually not even the knowledge and information, but the occurrences, but nobody here is really attacking what happens when you die. That kind of would make no sense. But it's because we've been taught to fear death. So what happens is no one wants to talk about death, and no one's even looking forward to it, and everyone's fearing it. So what does that really create? It creates where we cling on to life. Now, here's also the secret to a smooth transition into a higher frequency. When you cling to life, meaning that you have all of this stuff here and you never fully realize what it is, it's basically you, all itself. You're not leaving anything. If anything, you're going to be joining up with the full magnitude. But if you don't see things that way, then when it's time for you to go, you basically hold on to everything. And you're pulled from this. Just like death, when it comes to an individual, they can't really fight it. So it pulls them, but if they're holding on, the frequency that they go into just because of the wanting to stay on Earth and no, I don't want to leave, puts them into a low frequency versus a real adept knows that death is only a transition. And thus when it comes upon him, he eases smoothly or she eases smoothly out of the body, governing the frequency that they go into. Now you see, that's why there's a lock and nobody can teach this whole thing, because everyone will be basically weighed, as they show you with the Egyptian scales, based on how well you learned that this was an illusion and that none of this stuff was really to be held on to, only looked at like the indigenous. When they came through here, they tried not to disturb much. They took advantage of the fruits and the trees and the plants and the knowledge, and then they did. They didn't leave a bunch of stuff hanging around and stuff like that, and there was a reason for that. Because, again, there's even two sides to this planet. There's a nighttime to this planet. This planet does dish out karma. So I think that, you know, we've run a massive gambit of information, and I'm definitely ready to expand more. But that's what we're talking about with 2012. 2012 is basically a make 'em or break 'em date. Because when we cruise up through 2012 and into 2013, there are going to be a large group of people that when they feel like they didn't get the expansion that was promised to them because they misunderstood the text, then it's going to basically take the last wind out of them. Because now what are they going to do, make up another date? Oh, it's 2013 actually. On 2012 they messed up the numbers. No, they don't even have room for that. Humanity wouldn't even accept that. So what's happening is that for this, giving ourselves deadlines has never been a good idea. Prophesying bad things to happen in the future has never been a good idea. And especially being encouraged to do as such. And that's why what you'll see with the resistance is we don't prophesy negative things happening in the future and going to occur so that we can be used like pawns and our energy used to actually make it come about. If anything, like I said, it was good already. See, that's what we have to see. Like, we've already learned so much and gained so much experience from being here. If we would just sit down for a moment and take it all in, we could have big smiles on our face. Especially anybody that's on this line communicating. Like, you got internet, you got access to the vastest level of knowledge if you just have time to stay up and awake, even if you work. But the reality is that if we get too many things, and this is also why it's happening to us. Some people say, well, why is this even allowed to happen? Well, it was because the first thing that we birthed, our first seed, we stopped taking the responsibility for it. Who was the first seed that survived? Cain. So this would actually mean the dark people in this world, we neglected to take care of them at a certain point, and now they become our worst nightmare. Many people would not think of that and think that's true, but think about every day you roll around knowing there's a baby or somebody in this world that can definitely be using help, but they're not getting it. And then day after day go by, now they're grown, and how do you expect them to be? So this is also why many people want to connect what the Nagas are about and how that even connects to the Nephilim, etc. Is to understand many of the ancestors that are here on this planet are actually in that karmic spiral of not taking care of their children. And this also replicates in why certain races, the fathers are generally not around, because their father is not around. See, like when it gets back to the hierarchical level with the entities, and in those entities and how they're treating their children. So, of course, there is every time a new opportunity to correct these wrongs. Meaning that every man that's out there and every woman that's out there that has a child or has access to a child will actually see that where they're real, like the ages that we're going into now, I suspect you draw close to your oversoul and spiritual side, that it will be 100% your guide. Meaning that it will give you the substance that you need. And it's not a needy and a wanting thing, meaning that the expansion of the information that's here and available for you to be able to apply to your body is on another level. Don't confuse it for making juju bags in prosperity bundles and all these different things. We're talking about the real deal. If they enter the holiest of holies, we have to too. Surely they're not more holier than thou. Meaning that you can't let someone else disturb and destruct your DNA and then you acting and sitting back like you can't go in there and fix it yourself. This is the same way as you can't now even afford not to ingest most of the knowledge and come to full terms about what's happening in this planet so you can expand. But it's definitely your choice. I'm sure many people have sat back during the conversation and said, no, all wrong, all wrong. And again, the solution was delivered in the beginning. And if you say that the balancing of the vehicle, the planet is 23 degrees off tilt, that means that if the physical planet is 23 degrees off tilt, then the universe is too. So this will probably mean when the Greeks, everyone thought the Greeks were stupid because they were drawing the universe like it was in a complete circle. It probably was then. Now it's in elliptical. Elliptical occurs when something is off balance. So what we're really, again, dealing with is the correction and the balance, and we can take it from any level. Now, remember, they understand also this as above, so below nature, obviously. They even tried to take credit for the actual term. Crowley wasn't the first person to say as above, so below. But what happens is you can go under the microscope and deal with things that are happening in the heavens. It's a sliding scale. So what happens is that the individuals on the planet can begin to awake all subsequent scales on the side of them. Now, it just so happens that there seems to be, with the symbolism, a high potential that is actually what occurs because the symbolism that corresponds to this planet is a cross. So it means that whatever is activating in that center that's becoming that birth from those opposing forces actually sends out its essence and energy as if something else that is supposed to feed consciousness. So we always see consciousness feeding and going somewhere, like leaving and flying off. But that's not what really happens. It spreads out a network. Look at what trees do. When the seed of the tree lands in a distance from the tree, it has now created another network to the tree. This is what they found out in tree communication. So thus a tree from way down the road can tell another tree, hey, there's a fire over here. And so there's things that we're capable of doing by simply understanding the earth that we've been put in. And that's why I said earth is the gift, my friend. What happens here is that what humans are doing to humans can actually make us think that this thing was not that. But in fact it was. And everything that is needed to expand is actually here. And that's the good news. Now, there's going to be a little work that we need to do with the wheel. We need our wills, meaning how much we feel like we can do something, is what we have to repair. Like they have beat the wheel out of us because this is what domestication is. Now, here's also the secret to why they like God as a dog. Because a dog can be trained to attack. Now, notice how Israel and Ishmael are supposed to be having the same father or the same God. They all even put the finger up in the air and one. But the reality is that they're obviously in conflict with each other. Why? Because they keep praying for their God or higher power to kill the other person. God, help me in my battle and allow me to destroy my enemy. So what kind of God are you actually dealing with? You're actually praying for this God, for this same other man who's also praying to a God to attack and kill him. See, that's why you know it's not monotheism, or is it? Because mono is moon. Moon is moon theism. That's lunatics. And that's what you're dealing with. They don't even see it right under their nose about what the hell is happening to them, which is that they're being caught in a conflict by their own energies. Their own energies awakening within themselves and them not being able to balance those energies. So the reality, of what we have going on here is just so expansive because you can find the answers to everything everywhere. You just at times have to be able to get enough of this information into you so that way you can start to put it over the reality as like what they call a GUI or GUI. And then what that does is that it gives you the vision of being able to see through everything. And by all means, that's what we want to do. We want to really start getting things clear here so that people can start speaking on this level or at least understanding on this level on their own. Seeing how that their body is connected to everything that's going on around them and how they can choose to just straight grab the wheel and start really, really getting themselves into balance. So, I know that was definitely a long answer to the question, but I wanted to get all the information that encapsulates just, 2012, what it really means and our lineup and how we can choose to line up those energies ourselves.
Excellent. And we're going to go to our switchboard, brother, because it seems we have someone with a question here. Let's see. We have a caller from the 312 area code. Caller, if you're there, please state your name and where you're calling from.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine, brother. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Excellent, excellent. Do you have a question for Brother Sevan?
Oh, I do. I was listening to Coast to Coast the other day, and June below Melchizedek, was speaking on how when the shift happens or after it happens, I'm not sure, but he was talking about the Earth losing its magnetics for, I don't know, a period of a few minutes or what have you. And basically, you know, being that the magnetics has to do with consciousness and memory, he was talking about, you know, Russian cosmonauts, you know, when they left the Earth, they kind of lost their memory and kind of went a little crazy or something like that, and that just kind of had me, you know, wondering about that. Did you have anything to say about that, or?
For sure. It's the same thing as I was saying before. What generally gets blown away in the cosmic wind is falsehood. So what's been going on is them containing so much information that is not a real anchor point. It's not based on anything that's real. You can go crazy and lose your mind because there's no connection to anything, or what's called grounding. As far as Drambalo, you know, again, portents of death and doom, you know, 3 days of darkness, all of these proclamations or prophecies are being taken directly from misinterpreted scriptures and things that have come out of the Talmud and many of the ancient books. So what it really describes, again, is something that can occur at any point within you to take your body through basically the proper alchemical procedures to go into a full awakening and the stages that go on in between. So again, when a person chooses to say this is now the point that this is supposed to occur, this is generally where, you know, there's a grabbing for people, or grabbing for more attention so that people can say, okay, he says that this is going to happen. I would highly advise people to see that all of what they're saying is supposed to take place. We're already pretty much done with 2012. You can see there was definitely a great deal of things that happened, especially for people that were tuned in. But for those that were basically watching and waiting for something to happen, they missed it. And I noticed that this is really one of the major techniques of the Dark Brotherhood, is to set a date out 2-3 weeks and then tell everyone that it's going to happen, something very terrible. And then that whole time, the person's worried, concerned, etc., and then the person is basically being drained as when the frequencies when the frequencies that correspond to that magnetic come around, they pull the person's energy. And then what happens is when that day finally comes and nothing occurs, and then the person goes to that individual and says, well, what doesn't happen? They say, well, great, it didn't happen. We averted it, brother. Look, man, that's an old game. You see what I mean? Like that's a game of that they drain energy that way because the fear is what is needed in the time. See, the key to, of course, major spiritual awakening is to know there's no time. It has to be done now. And that type of urgency creates a great level of will. And then that will actually corresponds, gives you the same frequency. Let me show you how magnetics work really briefly. And I believe one of my batteries is going out on the mic. Just in case everyone hears it cut out, I may have to replace the battery. But let me explain to you how this magnet really works. Now, when I say that we have a magnetic field, it's not like the magnets that you're playing with in the store. Those are the as-below resonators to the magnet. The as-above resonators, which is what you are, the magnetic and what you attract to has to be on your exact frequency. You attract to what your frequency is. So what happens is that if they can pull the person into a lower frequency, then they can also pull the energy from the person through every single device that corresponds to that lower frequency. So, of course, this can be flipped around 180 degrees. If you're attempting to achieve a higher frequency, all you do is match yourself to that frequency, and it will pull you to it. This is the secret to also proper space travel. Proper space travel is not through propulsion. You don't use rockets. What you do is you magnetically
Brother Sevan, we're getting a lot of static from your end.
Okay. Let's go ahead and change the battery. I apologize for this. It's a 2-hour battery.
All right, brother. So while you're doing that, we're going to take a short break, family, and we'll be back with Brother Sevan. Caller, we're very sorry. Thank you for calling in, and excellent question. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you. It was an honor.
Likewise. Peace.
Peace.
Okay, family, and we will be right back with Brother Sevan. And we are back, family, with tonight's guest, Brother Sevan. And for those who have been listening in all evening, I told you that this brother had some very, very powerful information for us this evening. I can't wait to bring this brother back. So please, brother, let's continue. And I'm going to ask another question, as we go along, because, I've been doing this for a long time, and every day, I find myself educating, or at least re-educating people as to what the occult really is, what it's about, and what it means. So now, as we go forward, as we move forward towards the end of 2012, and we go forward into 2013 and beyond, do you see more and more people becoming open to this type of information and the institutions of organized distorted doctrine, as I call them, more commonly known as religion? Do you see them do you see them receding into the background and more occult knowledge coming forth? I think we're having some problems here.
Okay, no, Curtis, I'm actually here. I apologize. I did have my mute button on, but...
I see.
but yeah, I mean, to answer your question, first of all, really great question, because it's a big question also everyone has. It's like, okay, so what is the beginning game? What is the end game? What's going to happen next? How is this thing even supposed to transcend? Because if people ask the real question, they can have all the great ideas like free energy and all sorts of stuff, but we still have a society to attempt to apply it to. And of course, if we're looking at that happening in 2 months, then something major is going to have to occur for us to be able to do that without going into also the land of sorrow, meaning that now nobody's money isn't worth anything, and, they got these cars, and, how is it all going to transcend? And honestly, to tell you the truth, that's what got me really exploring the esoteric knowledge and occult knowledge so deeply, because as I started going on, I said, man, we're going to need a massive solution to be able to deal with if any of this stuff is even half true. And then I would look at others kind of and be like, yeah, does he even or she even believe in this stuff? Because, if you believe in it, then you kind of are going to be a little nervous anyway if you can't find a solution. So I kept digging for the solutions, and of course I found in massive levels that solution within. That's actually even how the resistance began, with me going through that transformation, because I understood that it could happen to anyone. It could actually happen to a person where you could expand into the greatest energies of yourself and then start going on this quest of total realization, and then bringing others along on that quest with you, because there is the main thing you also see within the symbolism of the occult is that we are designed to operate as an entire body, not as separate. So every single part of humanity, or each culture and each race, has a specific job and duty basically in this entire body. And this is why some people see so different than us. Like, let's say, for instance, the Chinese versus the African Americans. Let's say that. The difference in that is because the Chinese are running one part of the body, while the African Americans should be running another part of the body, or melanin dominated should be running another part of the body. So, but what happens is that if each person, just like what you see with combustion, if one of the energies or elementals, which is what they really are, the elements, the keys to everything, not something simple, but basically the founding blocks of everything, if one jumps up and says, well, it says I'm stronger, and it only shows it's stronger because it floats over water, the fire is going to be there on the bank to show it that, hey, you're not. No, you're not. I'm the strongest. And then as soon as that occurs, water is going to do the same thing. You see what I mean? There's this, and that's honestly what's driving the universe. So if people want to understand, well, how does the universe play into this? Well, look, there's a newsflash. The universe is not this fluffy teddy bear that you keep imagining. The universe is responsible for surviving. Everything's going to survive. Now, if you can beat the curve, then by all means do it. But realistically, this thing will eat you. That's how it works. So you need to speed up and move faster than it's a destruction process. Now, the interesting part is we were created to be able to do that. That's why there should be joy all over the place, is because at least we're not sitting as some type of ostrich in the field and really not comprehending or seeing anything but through possibly one chakra or two chakras. We're actually this magnificent beings that see through multiple eyes. I'm telling you, the reason why the chakras, here's another secret, the reason why the chakras became the primary centers is because those are what we chose to idolize. And that's why every planet has an idol. But when you make it and form and fashion it with your hand, God, remember people do this, when you make something and you create it, you say, I become the creator, now you better be ready to step into God's game. Because now that you've jumped into this dualistic saying that something is yours, you're going to have to pay the price for everything that comes with that. But guess what? The universe loves it. It drives it as a vehicle, and that's why it's depicted as even a chariot. We're the chariot down here. Some people think it's really nice to be called the chariot. But the reality is that when you're the vehicle or you're the Jake and Boaz of the universe walking around, it doesn't feel so great, especially if none of the higher entities are distributing any of the materials that they've gained on the etheric plane. You see, the reality is that any time a person is bred in a certain environment, if they get the best of that environment, they're happy. But what happens if even in the environment they're living in and know not of greater places, that is terrible to them? Does it not also mean that even in the higher places it's not great? And I tell you the truth, when you get into the higher levels of energy, you'll find out that they're just as miserable at times as we are because it's stuck. There's no bridge. So this keeps them from being able to cycle the energy. This is like pent-up energy. How pent-up energy manifests on the reality is people that are keeping a lot of things, especially like hundreds of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of acres, and then there's other individuals that are not getting any because there's no distribution of the seeds. So there's a hoarding of the seeds. So what happens is that star seeds need to become star trees really fast, or, really this thing can reset anyway because the timeline is too slow. Meaning that I think also there's this curve that the universe is dealing out that is actually saying, look, you have to enliven yourself or step up to this. You have to have the will to survive, or we can still use you, but you'll be as fertilizer, seed. You'll be the actual element that is used to bring forth everything. Feline, womb, cat. See, the people of Ka, they miss the words because the words are the key. That's how everything is actually functioning. Even the words we speak now, some people be like, oh, English, that guttural Germanic language. How did those guttural Germanic people get in control of you then? What does that say about your knowledge? See, what's happening is that we have to see the system that actually we're under and how it has us pinned down. Now, obviously, to go to the control point, if the body is the pentagram, then it's pinning us down. It's governing us. Lord Governor is the body. It stops us from going into the fully expanded sense of ourselves of we're not the body. The body would hate for you to decide that you weren't it. That's what people need to, this stuff is real. It's organic. It thinks, even on its own. We are blended with the biorhythms and the connections of the portals from other animalistic energies that carry their entire families across the cosmos like shepherds. And then we're sitting here as supposedly the apex being, but getting walked around by the dog. Meaning that the covenants that you see here on the planet with Anunnaki and with Cain and Khan, they equal a certain thing, meaning that there's a Cerberus, a certain entity that attempts to hinder the potential of you in order to increase you. So either it's going to be walking you and ravaging you, or you're going to be basically healing it. That's also noticed. In the Temple of Pythagoras, I'm not saying these people were stupid. Like they attempted to usurp the entire system and put it on another level so that this could never occur again, and it horribly failed. So see, anything that was you're working with the tree, that's the thing. You have to have this real part to yourself. There can't be desperation. So it's hard to make decisions when you're desperate, but most people get into the religious situation when they're desperate. Most of these religions come from prison. I learned religion from prison. See, what happens is when we get on when we need some help or we think we need some help, we often call on certain things, and our will is really high. Like think, when something's about to happen to you, God help me, the energy coming off you at that point is definitely going to the God that you think exists. But it's not going to you. And now, it may get you out of the situation. This is the funny part. There's a continuous relationship with this. entity that, or eidolon that we set up outside of ourselves that we keep calling God. It even acts on its own, and that's the other secret about this world, about it being a shade. Shaddai is their ruler. The shade of the tree, the back side of God. That's why I told Moses, you can see my back, but you can't see my face. Like what happens here in this world, we start to see maybe this stuff is not so funny. Like maybe we're fearing to die, but in actuality it was because we were scared to live. We couldn't handle living for a while. Like, living means like a dolphin. Every breath you breathe, you got to be conscious of. Do you know how tiresome that is? So some chose to go to sleep. So like I said to people, when you wake up, just ask yourself, man, how long have I been asleep? Because you know you're awake. It's just like childbirth. A man could never tell another person what childbirth is like. A man could never say that, yeah, I know what it's like. He'll never have it. Just like that's like the occult world, real spiritual contact. You can't just say, I know about spirits. You never met no spirit. And then here's another thing about spirits. You know when it's separate than you. And most people haven't been through that phase because that phase is actually called crazy. And that's where most of those people are, in the crazy house. Because they open up they remove the veils. Now remember, the veils are set up like atmospheres. They're there so that if you saw it and beheld it for what it really is, what is it? The sun. If you knew what it really was, it would throw you off your game. So what's in between is all these layers and filters that shield you from the sun. So of course how that manifests on the physical reality is that basically these atmospheres are protecting you from the sun, just burning you to ash. So what happens here is that if you can transcend that on all levels and see that that is the external sun, Metatron, you can even take a picture of it and see how it puts itself in a Merkaba. Then you can know there's actually another correspondence inside of you, but don't wander after the sun. It'll burn you up. That's why they say in the occult works, don't get too close to the fire because you will get burned. The goat would be that you would turn into a goat, meaning that your sexual passions would be burning so high with lust, you would eventually degenerate you into something like pedophilia. Porne is the demon of the moon. That, of course, is what's affecting most men because they spill the semen. It doesn't allow it to build up so that it can climb the ladder. I have all the Egyptian scriptures of what's supposed to happen. Jed is supposed to be raised. That means all beings in the body are to be commanded to raise the pillar, raise the Jed. Now, why would you need to raise the Jed? I think what would be taking place on Earth around this time. I don't think Jed would even be useful in any other time, meaning that I don't think personally activated humans are very useful in dull, boring worlds where there's nothing to do. But it's a hell of a world for someone that actually knows what they're doing with their energies, meaning that they know that this is here because you're transmuting, like I used to call it space credit. You can actually get so many accolades for being an individual that can become a converter of taking negative energy and turning it back into neutral energy, not positive energy. See, when you take a positive person and you make them negative, or you take a negative person and you make them positive, you've done nothing. You've cost them more time. You just spent them onto another pole. You need to teach them they're neutral. Because in the neutral is the I. That's where you cease to become the product. There's no one to talk to because there's no one to listen. Everything is inside. This is the state that actually man had achieved, woman had achieved being able to go in and out of. Remember, I'm not just talking about something where you have to leave and you're struggling to get somewhere. I'm telling you that we actually had accomplished being in all those spaces. I tell you the truth, when I actually woke up, I saw myself slumped over a throne, somewhat opiumed out with a bunch of entities in front of me trying to entertain me. And I had turned all of my eyes to look at them, and I forgot about myself. I think that's the same problem with a lot of people running around here, that they've entertained so many different things, they forgot about themselves. Like, where are you going today? And this would really be a multi, like the essence of the connection of spirituality that we have, we need. We're all dying without it. But by all means, someone has to break the veil. And this is also the same thing of when a child is coming into the world. Look, when the child comes into the world, now the child must get ready to come down the canal. Where the child is really coming from is, if you want to see it on an external level, is like coming from out of the sun and then crossing through all the planets. And then the portals of the planets, which are in a particular geometric shape, are shaping this seed as it's coming through each of these wombs. And then finally, when it arrives on the one that it becomes awake or conscious in, it screams out. It screams. And then that begins the birth of us into this dimension. But remember, it's a smear. So we actually leave a trace of us in every single planet. And this is most of the time the entity that we see in the dream, that we fail to take a mirror and be able to look into and see who you really are in that dream. Until you're lucid, it's very difficult to grab a mirror in the dream and see that you're not even who you appear to be in this world. And that, again, is another secret, because if you can't control your dream, it doesn't stop your dream from happening. Likened unto this world, if you can't control this world, it still doesn't stop this world from happening. So this is also a public service announcement, or you can call it a warning to everyone, that until you can actually control the field that's around you, at least within your own house and at least within your understanding, your body, then you always will be somewhat vulnerable to something occurring because you haven't really stood up yet. That's what anything understand or standing is about, standing up. Now, this standing up, they say, is basically like a serpent that is on the ground and then it straightens itself up and it can stand upon itself. This is actually the symbol of a resurrected human, is a straight line that it's actually been able to, is given the ability to stand up. Now, it's interesting because we stand up naturally. We're only running around here fully in standing up mode because we have a field around us. It's easy to feel when you start meditating, you start rocking back and forth. If you get into a certain level, it's not hard. Using Ethereum products especially, and you feel the rocking back and forth because you're this generator. But what if that thing really started kicking off? Now, I've been through experience where it kicks off and you can't cut it off. I mean, that's definitely not how you want to go in. This is like putting a child in a 747 Boeing and saying, fly it. It's just dangerous. And this is also what the spiritual teachings used to teach us, is they gave us the information about what to avoid, the lambs on the path, meaning what's going to hold you back on the path to avoid certain things and pitfalls. Unfortunately, that information got so encrypted and so zoomorphied that we didn't even recognize it anymore. And that's what's happening in our world today. So, you know, it's good to go on the journey and the trip with everyone, but as I tapped into it before, there's a cushion, a field of essence that is on its way and to be delivered to this planet, that it equals the ultimate love. Like, some people think that they actually went through the nourishment part, but that hasn't even started yet. The nourishment comes when we come together. Whether we'll be coming together in flesh or not, I know not. But I know we'll be coming together in spirit. And I think I see a time ahead, if I can see with all of my eyes, that when I ask you, did you see me last night? You know you saw me. Meaning that dream connection where you meet up with someone there, I think this may be on the brink, and you say, yo, meet me here, and then you meet there, and you keep traveling, but you have physical bodies, I think that's where we're going to next. And I think that's also what's going to solve the solution of remaining in the physical reality so that the work can be carried out that needs to be done here while having more of the freedom of the spiritual reality that will allow you to expand, your spirit to expand, so that while it's on earth, it's large. And so that's the other thing. So if a person really wants to understand where is the training and where is the information that is coming from, much of it is given to you while you're asleep. And you forget it when you wake up, or you think you do, because it's basically like you're trying to bring a certain shape that doesn't go in this dimension through a portal that it won't fit through. So it remains on that other side for you to access it there. But of course the secret is to be able to take that information, to remold it into the structure of how things are here, and then to bring that information back to the portal, through the portal. And what that means is that all of the knowledge and the essence of what you're actually thinking of creating and inventing, because inventing is one of the most important things, that you're actually able to figure out how you're going to be able to do that here. That is the shaping of it, like how you're going to get around the red tape or whatever you want to call it, like how you're going to make it actually happen in this reality is your version of shading the idea down into the geometry of this reality. And enough of that, as I tell people now, be inventors, enough of that and taking those ideas, then it won't be long before the world sees the awakening that it's been expecting. Because we have to see it also as this. Throughout history, though, some of the greatest things that we're utilizing now were the work of one or two people. Majority of the people on the planet have just benefited off of it. It's just how earthlings are. It's like a couple people do some things and then everyone else benefits off of it. That's how we've been living for a while. But I think that also there's not just those couple people, it's just as I've learned in my path now, when you have a lot of people that are believing in you and they are basically saying, look, I'm really behind you in this, it drives you to actually really discovering the truth and really being genuine with it if you're going in the right direction. And of course, all of us in the beginning of this have made judgments, or even at times things have happened that we didn't even know why they occurred and the people that they occurred with and what was happening. But I tell you the truth, how you correct all stories is to make sure that at this point you know what you need to do. And so this is also the total happiness with self, when you're comfortable with where you are right now. So tonight, especially to the people that were listening, when you lay back in your bed and you think of all the message that was delivered and this fantastic adventure that you've been on and what you are and what you are part of just by being inside of this body and having that spirit, then a smile should come on your face before you actually close your eyes and get ready to enter into the next world. And then you start seeing this for what it really is. The glass is truly, truly half full. Like, there's nothing here that doesn't equal expansion for where we're going. It's just clinging to this whole materialistic reality and all this other stuff is what's really got us not thinking ahead. It's not going anywhere. Hell was, looking, if you read in the heck a lot, hell was designed to be pleasing. That way you would never know you're there. It means heat and health. We just got lost in the symbolism. Like, it's the womb itself. But it becomes hell when you're ready to get out and you don't even know where you are. But how often does a mother's child go beyond the 9th month? So this is also what we have to see. Now, why is the number 9 key here? Because you have 7 colors when you shine the light through the spectrum, and then you have 2 absence of colors, which is white and black. So that's 7 plus 1 plus 1 is 9. That's all that exists. There's no 10. What I'm explaining to you is that in the reality that has a clear spectrum, there's no 10, because 10 is actually a composition of 1, of course, and then a number that's never supposed to be written. So hopefully, again, if people could get to a level of actually understanding that and seeing how the artificial one moves with binary codes. The artificial one is it works in these zeros and ones, yes or no, dip switches. And that's creating a heavy level of stagnancy, because it's like, what is your choice, Bush or Romney? Is that a choice? I just say Obama. I want Obama. Because again, it's just the same designer, and it's the same. Go ahead.
Well, brother, we're winding down. Just take a minute or two, to let everybody know about your great show on live stream, brother, your website, and family. Wasn't he awesome? I'm already planning his next visit now. Whoever had a question and we weren't able to get to it, we deeply apologize. But Brother Sevan is going to be back shortly. I don't think I'm going to wait a month or a couple of weeks to bring him back. We need to bring Brother Sevan back as quickly as possible. Like next week, the week after, we'll have to talk about that.
Sure, man. There's a well of it, so I definitely want to say thank you for hosting the call and the energy tonight. It was just amazing. Like, I did feel definitely a little bumpy road in the beginning, but, man, I want to really listen to the last part of that conversation and really absorb, just what was said. But on general, what we're actually doing now is, as I said, I've gotten so much into utilizing the pictures that go along with this. Today I was like, oh my goodness, because I had just went through a whole thing with another person, but just having to talk on the radio. But we're going to be definitely working with the Ton Network to get some content to you that is fully interactive. But as far as the information and the pictures and everything being compiled, we're getting our hands on that equipment now. So that'll allow us to get some stuff up that you can see a lot clearer.
Excellent. I look forward to it. But please, let everybody know about your website and any other information you may wish to share with us, good brother.
Okay, for sure. Well, we're at astroquest.com. That's kind of easier. Resistance 2010 is the other website address. But that's where you can log on. Of course, there's a plethora of knowledge there. There's books, there's recordings, there's everything available to you. And then so definitely you can enjoy that. And other than that, like I said, I want to send much respect to everyone out there that has, again, paved that way and made those bridges. And hopefully there was something that was gained out of the conversation today that was able to click with some type of catalysm within you. And but I just want to let everyone know I'm doing the best that I can, but I definitely know that my best is a lot. And that's how I just wish everyone will go at this, is with the will of really understanding exactly what we're dealing with here, so that the faster we can get to that comfort zone or that buffer that I keep saying is waiting to nourish us.
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, if Brother Sevan is available next week, we would like to bring you back for part 2. You know,
Oh, man, that would be awesome.
Yes. As a matter of fact, we will discuss that tomorrow. We will set the date and time for that tomorrow because, brother, believe me, I can tell by your energy you have so much more to share. You know, it's just that time ran out on us. So, yes, this brother deserves another 3 hours and another 3 hours after that and another 3 hours after that.
Man, thanks a lot, Curtis.
Thank you so much, brother. Peace and blessings to you. I will be in touch with you tomorrow, and it was a pleasure, brother.
Okay, no doubt. Wholeness. Thank you. I want to say thank you again to everyone for tuning in.
Thank you, brother, for being here with us. Wholeness. Peace. And we also want to thank you as well, beloved family, for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us this evening on Occult Science Radio. Tune in tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when we will have Jason Gregory, a master occultist, who will share some powerful information with us as well.